Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. Today on the podcast, we're talking all things decontamination and particulate protection. Fire contaminants can increase the risk of cancer and other diseases in firefighters, but simple changes can help firefighters to protect their health for their colleagues, themselves, and their families. Now, as you're probably more than aware, firefighters are more than 4 times more likely to get cancer than the average working person. This has been linked to toxic contaminants released during fires, and it's important we get the facts, the information, the opinions, and also look at how we can learn from some of the information that has already come out, and also how other organizations around the world, other fire services, other brigades are dealing with this global challenge. I was lucky enough to recently attend an event at Biggin Hill Airport Fire Station, where we were joined by people from all over the world and supported by PGI and Hunter to talk about a whole host of issues. We are literally going to go through an absolute buffet of ideas, solutions, facts, statistics, information from the world of toxicology. We're going to talk about toxic suppression. We're going to talk about decontamination. We're going to talk about clean cabs. We're going to talk about those who have suffered the big costs of this. We're going to talk about firefighter cancer. We're going to talk about people who are going through this and their experiences. This is not a new subject to many people who already work in the sector, but it's something that is kind of accelerating itself to the forefront of our minds as the data, the information, and the awareness of this is ever increasing. If we'd have known better way back when, then we'd have done differently. But now we know better, so we have got to start doing better. So I hope there's loads you will take away from today. I hope you can share it. I hope it causes discussion. I hope you don't agree with everything that's said today. There will be different approaches, there will be different versions, there will be different strategies operationally, environmentally, organizationally, in the ways that we are trying to solve this challenge. In countries such as Canada and Australia, they are a long way ahead of us, and the US as well. The link between firefighting and cancer has been heavily researched. So I hope you take a lot away from today. I hope there is lots for discussion, lots for debate. I hope you share this with a lot of people to share really what's happening. How are we all going about this? Big thanks once again go to Andy Slater from PGI, Simon Hunter from Hunter Apparel Solutions, and the boys and girls at Biggin Hill Airport Fire Station. This is just one of many examples of seminars and events that are happening across the UK Fire and Rescue Service to try and crowdsource this information and share it as wide as we possibly can. We've got to make sure we're all in this together. So without further ado, we will go into the first of 7 conversations in today's episode. Do have a look in the notes below. You will see a few timestamps if you want to jump ahead or come back to one of the conversations from today's episode. So lots to get into in today's episode. So let's jump in there with our first conversation, and I will see you all on the other side.
Michael O'Brien, so I'm head of fire and security at London Biggin Hill Airport.
Do you prefer Mick or Michael?
Mick. Michael is when I get told off.
Hopefully not
Mick.
Today.
So you start off with Mike and then Mick and Michael and Mickey, and so I went Mick. That do.
Mick, Biggin Hill is an absolutely beautiful site.
Yeah, we're proud. We're so proud of it. Seriously proud of it. We are. We're a little airport. We're a little player in the market, but we want to be proud of it, and hopefully it comes through in surroundings we've got today and the people as well. So
what I love so much about today is there's no professional obligation to put today on, which kind of leads me down that curious track, because I know why I wanted to come, and I know why there's people from all over the UK Fire and Rescue Service. Why is it important to Biggin? Why have you chosen to host it here? Why have you put your hand up and said, yeah, we want you here, we want to help share this message?
Yes, it's actually a really simple one, and that is we're passionate about the subject matter. Okay. So we are help anybody out. We're customer service focused. We're sort of born with it, but we're not going to do stuff for. It has to be the right cause. So if you want 100% from Biggin Hill, which is the fire service here, it's got to be a subject that means a lot to us. And the major one for us is we can make a change. That is the key. So the likes of me, the old fogies of the world, me, if I can make a change, and I vowed with my team is a legacy. My name, is the head of the fire That's just a status for me. I'm in charge of my part coming through. So my little stint is now, and I need to make a change for the new generation. And then this came up. We have a good relationship with John and Robbie Burns, and we are committed 100%. And the good thing is the company are behind us as well, and that meant a lot to us.
It's that aspect of leaving it better than you found it, isn't it?
100%.
Like I say, we're just custodians. It was here long before us, it will be here long after.
Yeah, and the thing around us is we had that little syndrome of Lisbon Airport, haven't got big money, haven't got big purses, to spend money. But this one doesn't need big money for the change. No. It just needs the mindset to change and a few policies and manuals to be put in place.
The mindset and the behavioural stuff
100%.
is so important.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about chemicals, carcinogens, decontamination, people will be astonished, really. I mean, we deal with it everywhere in the fire and rescue service, but certainly with airports, aviation fuel, all the stuff that comes in and out of these places. Why is it important for you in terms of your firefighters, the safety for them, to ensure we're getting this right? And you said, you're one of the older members of the crew.
Yeah.
What was it like when you joined, and how much progress do you think we've made?
Yeah, so my background before, I was in the RAF. I was the firefighter in that, and we had the gun-ho spirit. We've got loads of avgas and Jet A1. Burn it. Let's burn it and do the biggest fires.
Yeah, 100%.
Big for fun. We enjoy our life. This is fantastic. Back to the old badge of honour, with the photographs, the blackface, and we were the best in the world for it. The biggest fires in the world. Come to Biggin Hill, we had something to prove. We were a little airport, so we became. Our fires were the best. Yeah. Our training was the best. Everything was the best, but it came with the knock-on effect, which we now know the best we've done.
We didn't know it at all, though, did we? Back then, do you know what I mean? No. It was kind of, we just thought because bonfires, fires in the home, all this sort of stuff. You didn't think of it as dirt or carcinogen. It was just soot. It was just off-go. It was just you didn't really what it stunk like. You know what it smelled like.
Yeah.
But the whole evolution of the science and realizing what we've been putting ourselves into, and you kind of fills you with that little bit of dread, the things we used to do in the past. Not because we were stupid. If we'd have known better, we'd have done better. Now we know better, so it's that shift mentally and behaviourally to being what we need to do better.
Totally, 100%. Seriously on that, what you just said is dead on. We didn't know. But now we're starting to know, but it still continues. Still people are doing what we were doing, and that's the bit what draws us to go, stop. We can come up with an alternative way to train. The virtual reality, we can then reduce our training. We were just training because we wanted to train. But the days of old when we had when I joined, I had no flash hoods, your ears were the side that you were hot. And you were burning. I had the plastic leggings on, and the gloves were half-fit gloves, didn't really fit well. Hand-me-downs, we're forever doing that. But the changes now is, I think it's like today, is we need to change and do it quick.
What are you guys and your company thinking with the particulate flash hoods, the PPE? Because like you just referencing, the amount that PPE has evolved, it's now a highly complex garment. But then that's the aspect of how we're getting the contaminants out. Are we doing the right thing? The assumptions that we had before, we throw something in a washing machine, makes it clean. But then when you actually speak to the site, we've got some incredible people from Lancashire University here today, really shining a light on clean versus looking clean and smelling clean versus actually being clean.
So to start with the team we've got down, they've got a young, got a really young folks coming through. So the old generation like me is now to change it. That's all they know now.
Yes.
The new generation, that's all they know is clean, decontam, de-kit. What goes in your locker has got to be clean. Don't take anything home to your family to
that's
wash.
A big one. Yeah.
So we were the ones make. So I had to, and the management team here was to make a statement to go and buy the washing machines.
Yeah.
To go up to accounts and crawl and do a finance.
Am I putting you in a position of success? Do you know what I mean? Like, have I removed every barrier to the likelihood you're going to take that home with you? We've got to provide, we've got to solve all those problems for you, because otherwise human error slips in, convenience slips in. I do it when I get back. I'll just chuck it in the boot of my car and. Trying to be efficient, trying to be quick, but we don't need to be doing that anymore. You know, we need to recognise this and make those changes ourselves to not put you in that position, isn't it?
100%. It's them changes comes from, they do look at me, and then if he's taking it seriously, then it must be
Leading by
seriously.
example.
We then got to the point where I'm now sending the next our generation up to training facilities, and they're coming back and I don't agree with how they work, and they're not doing it. So
and that's what we want to hear as well. Not in like it's still not where we need it everywhere else, but the fact they're able to recognise it.
But they're very conscious. We're eating in our fire kit. We're having degrease in our fire kit. We're doing this, and it's not good. And I'm now using fire kit with no history, and the flashers are. They're talking about the flashers are rubbish, Mick, and so we've got that generated down in the station. But all fairness to the airport industry, we are really open to it. We will share everything we've got, everything, and we've got John.
Well, today's a great example of it.
Oh yeah,
you could have just had these experts here for yourselves.
Yeah, no.
You didn't have to invite everybody else. You didn't have to put on the day and all that sort of stuff. But it's almost like crowdsourcing knowledge. Yeah. It's like everyone else is coming at things from a different approach. They've got a different idea. That kind of neurodiverse approach to problem solving. Well, we're in the airport. You're in the civil aviation. You're in public sector. All of those angles, because there's so many solutions. And really, a win for everyone is sharing all that knowledge.
100%. Seriously, it's we tap into the market. We want to tell the world of the good, the bad, the ugly of what's going on, and how do we make change in the industry, and where does it go to another sector? So we were looking at the moment. We're looking at the fire service. We're ready to branch out as an airport for other departments to be the same. So the knowledge doesn't. We're not just stays here. We want to tell everyone, and through yourself now we go sort of globally. Let's tell the world. Yeah. So serious matter. I've seen the benefits. From the team,
and we see the cost as well of getting it wrong.
Yeah,
Steve Robbie's story and things like that.
The Greenfield's just come out, with the payments on that, so that was interesting. But from my side, I'll be honest with you, I'm sort of do the budgets and I go up and do the finance side of it. This hasn't cost me big money.
Really?
Hasn't cost me. All it is investment in the people and the mindset to change. My team here, they don't know how to do policies, but they do know how to do policy now because they're I want to do this. So now they're doing policies and they're sharing it with the Heathrows, the Gatwicks. We never had that before. Yeah. But our little world is getting bigger, and we're hoping to share anything we've got. So today, we'll come away and with an idea, and we'll share it. So it's been really eye opener for the team. But we want to not really want to put Biggin Hill on the map. We don't really want to do that. We just want to
the knowledge.
Just go forward. The knowledge.
It's incredible what you can achieve when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People as a team all come in here, put in their collective thoughts together and collective ideas. Yeah. It's amazing what you can achieve.
Yeah, I mean, we had this a few months ago. Yeah. We've done this, and now we haven't got enough room, and we have to pick a bigger venue. And
a great challenge
we
to
never
have.
thought that. So all the people here today are the changers.
Yeah.
We had them down in the fire station, looking around for the new generation, the Sentinel, the air conditioning system. But now we've got the cancer survivors now doing the talk, and then they can walk away here. And this is what we did. And you walk away, you make your mind up what you want to do. So nobody's here pressuring you've got to do this, do that. It's just they walk away. I mean, there's some big players here today who hopefully can change it.
100%.
So, we're looking forward to it. It should be a really good one.
Thanks. Cheers for your time, mate.
You're welcome.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
So I'm Stephen Robbie Burns to most people, an odd confusion.
Robbie, have you been to Biggin Hill before?
Yes, I have, yeah. So I was here at the last seminar in end of last year.
How surreal does it feel, having that experience last year, coming back, seeing how many people are here, seeing how many services we've got? It's growing quite significantly, this attention for it.
Yeah, it's incredible. Really positive. And I've got to say a big shout out to Andy at PGI. He's invested time, money, and pain, I think, into this, and emotion. So, as I spoke briefly earlier, his son is a serving firefighter, so he has a vested interest in his boys' well-being. And he's not here to sell us products. He's here because he's got a good product, to be fair. But he's offering something that is bringing us all together in one room, and we're all listening, and we're all talking about pertinent things.
Why do you think it's so emotive? I mean, obviously, we've had you on the podcast. Your story is a combination of harrowing, inspiring, painful, funny in places. It is a very emotive thing for a lot of people across the UK, but some people, unless they've had the benefit of sitting with yourself or someone who's had a similar experience, won't really have a great insight into why this is so important. And it frustrates me when I hear people not fully comprehending the challenges that we're facing in terms of contamination.
Absolutely. We still have disbelievers among the senior exec teams in the organisation. I know, it's just... The science is irrefutable now. The World Health Organization, the lead organization in the world, have said it's now a 1A, so it's the highest risk of cancer as an occupational disease. So akin to smoking 20 cigarettes a day is what they've associated the job with. And then there are some saying, well, the science is flawed. The science may be flawed, but all of the science points to one direction. So if it's flawed, most of it is pretty good. I'm shocked that people are still poo-pooing this as something that is as significant as it is. And it's going to bite people. It's going to bite some organisations. And I'm not bigging myself or the team that I work for, but Hampshire and the Isle of Wight are taking this by the horns. They really have. Reticent initially, I think, but they have to. The risk register says you need to sort this.
That's the aspect, isn't it? Is that the recognised risk with the backed by science. I totally do appreciate the financial aspect to it. It's frustrating. It's a bit like getting some news that your house is built on sand and you've got a really important thing that you need to do and it is going to cost you some money.
Yeah.
But the irony is someone was always paying the cost anyway.
Absolutely.
You, your family and your wife and your children have paid an incredible cost, and you're not alone. There will be many people who have paid a similar cost.
Yeah.
So someone is already paying for it in speech marks.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that we now recognised it. And it's almost that, it is our corporate responsibility to be protecting our personnel, our firefighters, and men and women out there who are facing this every day.
Absolutely. We have a moral responsibility as human beings to look out for each other. Then the corporate responsibility, as you said, we have to have the right PPE and at the right time and the right decision makers and decisions to be made. This is a decision that needs to be made at a rate of knots. Before legislation, we are, I think Hampshire and the Isle of Wight anyway, are a little bit more in front in that we've invested that time and money. The cynic in me is because of the risk register, but I think also we have some genuinely interested people. I mean, you've got to reflect that I'm a taxpayer, and from my treatments and the time I've had off sick in the service, it's probably touching £500,000. Seriously. So that money that could have been reinvested had I had the knowledge or at least the awareness from a service perspective, 500k taxpayers' money has gone on me. It's far-fetched, really.
I want to be very conscious that I know it feels like, and it will feel like for senior leaders watching this, who are finger pointing at services and senior leaders, there is a big chunk of this pie that can be controlled within the individual's own sphere of control. There's a lot of behavioural stuff there.
Absolutely.
When you see firefighters themselves, like me and you, where we point, service isn't doing this, service isn't doing that, kit's not good enough, policy's not good enough, no one cares. What are you doing about it? What are the things that really, grind you when you see the behavioural things firefighters could be doing that they're not doing?
Yep. So I go out to stations and talk and try and instill scare. I scare people. I try to anyway, that they don't want to end up like me. But I'll go and I'll talk to people who will drip all over me about the service not, as you said, investing properly. Transparency is something we miss across our services. So just to be open and honest, things are expensive in this market at the moment. Of course. So we need to be honest. If we can't,
behavioural stuff's nearly free though.
Absolutely. So they'll get me around the table. They'll complain about things not being done correctly, but they won't wear nitrile gloves. They'll go and touch the truck. They'll eat once they've come back from a job without showering. They'll go straight to the gym with a filthy t-shirt on that they've just worn in a BA wear, and they'll think nothing of it, although they have this knowledge. So that cultural change is something that has to happen, and as you said, it's an individual choice. It has to be legislated for, and we, as leaders, then have to force that. You will shower. It's not you might need to shower. No, you will shower. The truck's off the run. You get yourself in the shower. Again, we need to talk about relief strategies. 4 hours is 4 hours. Any more than that is too many. If we have resources, we need to use those resources. But individuals, they still happily go and have a BA where scenario and then sit in traffic for an hour, passing multiple showers in fire stations. To stop, get a shower, get back in the truck. It's as simple as. But car fires, 3 a.m. They've not had a significant wear, but they've still been contaminated. They will go back to bed because it's too difficult to have a shower at 3 a.m.
I feel like it's because it feels like a should. You know what I mean? There's a great speaker who always used to say, I should lose some weight. I should save more money. I should spend more time with my partner. We should all over ourselves, as they say.
Yeah.
Shifting it from a should to a must. That is the real, like the seatbelt thing. For a lot of people, that shifted to a must.
Yeah.
Mid-90s, maybe slightly earlier for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I must stop smoking. These things became a must when you hit a pain point for yourself. And for so much of this, because it's a long-term damage, it's that chronic exposure. Like we said when we had a podcast together, you don't wear your harness full off the roof. You're going to get some feedback very quick.
Absolutely.
This, you don't necessarily get it straight away. How do we shift it into a must for people?
So we need to treat this like it's asbestos.
Okay.
Really, the asbestosis is a thing that we've known about for lots of years now, and we adjust accordingly. So we have full decon procedures for that. This is as poisonous as that. This is more damaging in some respects, uncontrollable. So
It's strange, isn't it? Because most people don't know anyone with asbestosis.
No.
I don't know. I don't think I do.
Because we
made it emotive enough.
Yeah.
To scare people is horrible, but you need to make it emotive enough to shift that behavioural change.
Absolutely. It has to be very visceral. Smoking, the packets of cigarettes, you see people with lung cancers and mouth cancers and things. Yeah. They're very, very good. I think they're tangible things you can see, and we react to those. Again, going back to your smoking analogy, we ban smoking in pubs and clubs. So people don't smoke in pubs and clubs. Therefore, people generally have stopped smoking in the UK anyway, because we banned it. Let's do the same sort of thing. We need to legislate. We need to internally make changes that are, you must, as you said, you must do that. You must shower. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, 100%.
Ultimately, that's a good terminology. I'm going to get T-shirts done.
Don't be a dick. I love it.
Absolutely.
I don't want to delve into all of your personal. I mean, people can go and listen to yourself on the podcast without wanting to, drag all of your personal life out into the open. What's been the personal cost for you, for your wife, for your children? Because I think to myself, if I were in your position, we don't know how much of this is contributed to what. We don't know what's fully to blame. Some of it may be genetic, hereditary, all this sort of stuff, a predisposition to things. But there's no doubt a certain percentage you've got to pick up as personal accountability and go, but I didn't do that, did I? And I didn't do that.
Yeah.
That pain, guilt, some time ago, and even now, because you're still ongoing with your treatment, not knowing how long you've got left with your children. I don't even know how you're here today. Talk to me about the personal cost.
So, I'm on antidepressants on a daily basis, and I've had issues with addiction to pain relief and that sort of thing. So it takes you, and alcoholism for sure, as a crutch, as a self-medication. It has its costs in many ways. Financially, obviously, I know of people in the same boat as me who are avid gamblers because it's a vent, it's an out.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of tattoos actually as a sort of pain relief, which I've got for life, which I'm more than happy with.
I'm covered in ridiculous tattoos.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it.
It's part of my journey.
100%.
Which is a positive for me, and it was a pain that I was controlling essentially. But every time I go to bed, I'm conscious. My wife is a lot younger than me, and I'm impotent. Ultimately, it's a huge thing. It's life changing. Clearly, my wife was 32 when I became impotent, and.
She's a beautiful woman as well.
She's lovely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
She's lovely.
Absolutely. So, it's rubbish. Not least, I'm conscious as well at work. I take time off sick because I can get quite dark. And I struggle with that. I struggle with a black dog quite a lot. And little things kind of flip you. So I'm conscious that perhaps I can't give my all at work. I'm probably over battering myself, maybe over analysing.
I think you give a much higher percentage of what is available to you, if that makes sense. So whilst you may feel like less is available to you, you're giving more of what you've got, if that makes sense. So like you've got 80%, you're giving 75. I know a lot of people fit and healthy with 100%, giving 40.
Yeah.
And with the greatest respect, the Fire and Rescue Service is there's a lot of people in it of that. There's a lot of dead wood drifting around sometimes.
Yeah.
They could be doing a lot more.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is incredible, brother. I love having you here today. I love spending time with you. I just want to thank you for doing this. Like we said on our podcast, the easy thing to do, the cognitive load of everything you're going through, life, family, finance, future, you don't need to do this. You'd be well within your rights to shrink into your own world and go, I just need to sort myself and my own out right now. So I think it's a huge thing for you to be here, mate. Thank you for coming and sitting down with me. It's an incredible pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Good man.
Nice one.
In other news, this episode is brought to you in partnership with MSA Safety. Today we have them to thank for the improved firefighter safety through connectivity in their brand new connected firefighter system. At the center of the connected firefighter platform is the MSA M1 SCBA with telemetry. You can view battery life, air pressure, and estimated time remaining either independently on the M1 itself or from the Luna connected device screen. Also, still with the air status, alarm information, search status, and all of this provided to the incident command for confident decision making during the scene. That integrates straight in with the Luna system, which is a wireless all-in-one device creating an independent search and rescue network, providing edge detection, enhanced personal thermal imaging, while simplifying post-scene reporting and data retention. One of the key parts of the Luna is their FAST system, the Firefighting Assisting Search Technology. This combines directional and distance information with thermal imaging to help find separated teammates and decrease response time. It actually connects you to the other crews in the vicinity for a unified search during the time of mutual aid by instantly notifying the network of Luna devices when there is a downed crew member, allowing for a prompt search and rescue. All of this then plugs into the FireGrid system for cloud-based connectivity, real-time information, and data-driven decisions for the incident commander. It enables you to see the exact location of your firefighters on the scene. And it doesn't require you to be sat on the station. The MSA Hub then provides a wireless gateway straight to the cloud, enabling wireless on-scene data for local and remote incident command for additional eyes on the scene. MSA are truly taking massive strides in the future of improved firefighter safety through connectivity. MSA is dedicated to increasing safety in the fire service through technological advancements. Various feature enhancements, new products, partnerships, and integrations will provide additional capabilities readily accessible by products, software, and services in the brand new MSA Connected Firefighter platform. Now back to the show.
Andy Slater, I'm from Lancashire, near Preston, and Managing Director of PGI Safety Limited.
Wicked. What is it you think firefighters in the wider sector aren't fully grasping around particulate protection and decontamination?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's interesting because some are really on board with it, and others quite literally still, they admit they don't understand enough about it. They're almost like scared, and they've obviously got to, get that message to their lords and masters as well, and they find it a struggle. I think essentially I think we're at the stage where they do understand how important it is. There's so much evidence out there.
That's undeniable now, isn't it?
Yeah.
That bit is what's really helpful because it's no longer this, ethereal thing in a black box in the corner. It is right in front of us. World Health Organization, data, universities.
Absolutely.
Undeniable.
Absolutely. And although I think you still come across the odd diehard, usually, I've been a firefighter 40 years and it's never affected me. But the reality is, and my son's a firefighter now and he's only 23.
No, he is, yeah.
And he's got hopefully his whole life ahead of him, So I kind of have a very vested interest in this as well. But to follow up with your question, I just think in some areas it still has a lot of pushback, comments that you hear that, is it really that important? We still hear, and are we not blowing it out of proportion? Which is, I think for me, given the weight of evidence, given the science and given what the rest of the world is doing, it is undeniable. And it's also not a massive investment.
No.
So it's crazy.
There's so many sides to what you're saying there. As I'm listening there, so there's a massive part of this is behavioural.
Yep.
But also I love what you said about almost the immediacy of the feedback. So what I mean by that is it's such a chronic long-term thing. I use the analogy of a seatbelt or a harness or something like that. You don't wear the thing, you fall off the roof. You don't wear the seatbelt, you hit the thing. Yeah. You get immediate feedback, it hurts. But then what surprises me when we think about, the asbestos generation and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
How many of us know anybody with asbestosis? But it's so emotive and we've learnt the lesson and we don't do it.
Yeah.
So I feel like we will get there with this. But the sad thing is we are starting to know people. Like Robbie Burns is here today. We're seeing these people crop up quite close to us who have got cancer. And you're like, damn.
Yeah, I absolutely. And that's what I personally really struggle with. I've been in life safety equipment for nearly 20 years, and I don't mind a minute. I love the industry. I love the job. And it never ceases to amaze me, just how some people don't take this very seriously or they're blind to it. And you're absolutely right. I used to use the analogy of smoking, because I was brought up in that age where they only started putting like warning signs on cigarette packets, and you still had those. Well, my dad smoked 90 a day, and blah blah blah.
Smoking in pubs, cars, in your living room.
Yeah, and nothing happened to me. And it's like, but hang on, but there's a lot of people getting cancer. That's undeniable. We have to do something about it. You can't no longer put your head in the sand over it. And I think also there's perhaps a little bit of pushback because some of the, say for example with particulate protection, there's some of the earlier PPE and hoods, they were very heavy, they weren't very breathable, and I think it put a lot of people off. But technology's moved on so much, that our particulate hoods are as breathable as a standard non-particulate. They're very comfortable. Yeah. So, and the cost difference between like a standard and that is like 30 quid,
Do you know what, though? So there's a great thing there. You just said the cost and then went to financial, which is understandable because it's like if we played word association game, cost is money.
Yeah.
But I said, and me and Robbie spoke about it on the podcast, someone's already paying the cost of getting this wrong. And Robbie is a good example. Yeah. The unseen damage that we're doing to ourselves, the cost, we mentally think about it as a financial thing. And it's uncomfortable, and I get that that's emotive for the people in those positions that are controlling the budgets. Everyone's got a pay rise in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. Things are difficult, things are tight. Socioeconomic is a genuine thing. It's challenging for people. But by not choosing to do the thing that is now undeniable, it's scientifically proven, there's evidence, there's lived experience, you're just pushing the cost onto the individual who doesn't know any better.
Absolutely.
I'm a knuckle-dragging firefighter. I say that about myself. I'm sure many aren't. But I either haven't got time, haven't got the level of knowledge, comprehension to digest and interpret a lot of this data.
Yeah.
I just know, and you said it earlier when you said that sort of fear and that uncertainty. People are scared. Am I doing it right? Am I not doing it? So can I touch this thing? Is that what's hurting me? Am I hurting myself?
Absolutely.
Do I want to come to work? I'm supposed to be doing this for another 30 years. Your son's 23.
Yeah.
He can retire 55. He might be in this job for 32 years. Is he going to come out of it? What's he going to be like when he does? All of these things.
It's a genuine fear for me from when you listen to these people speak, and that's why we started doing these seminars at PGI, because I'm going around and speaking to individual customers and getting the message out there, and there's also, and this is something that's I'm real passionate about this. I have a real problem with it. Is there's a lot of disinformation out there as well.
Yes.
And so I realised like this is a big problem. That disinformation could be based on manufacturers claiming they pass a certain certification when they don't, or they claim to a certain performance standard which they do not, and it's creating a lot of confusion. And plus, it's plain wrong. So what started off for us last year, and for me, I thought, well, do you know what? I need to do something different and get everybody in a room. Been doing this 20 years now, lots of people, and the enthusiasm that it generated, it blew us away, because we just thought, we'll get Robbie in a room and a few people, and and it grew to what we've got today. And I think the fact that, look at who we've got here today, and the caliber of people, from people flying in from Australia, just goes to show how serious it is. So if we can get that education out there, and that's what we realise we've got to do different. I think Do
you know what worries me when you're talking there? So, and again, we're not going to name brands, companies, anything like that, but there's a lot of people. Dave Matthews spoke about this when he came on the podcast, and he's like, there's a lot of people changing roles now. A lot of brand new people coming into procurement, don't have a background in it, don't have a knowledge in it, they don't have a qualification in it. And with the greatest respect to them, and they're more knowledgeable and experienced people than me, feels like the blind leading the blind. And you have a company, an organisation coming, and you have no idea what I'm telling you is right or wrong. And I say, you make the investment. You, as a professional organisation, then feel embarrassed because I'm a chief fire officer. Oh, someone's pulled the wool over my eyes. I've made an investment. I've built my house on sand. That is real. And Dave was great. The level of knowledge, and again, another gentleman in there speaking now, Shepherd, is like, that is the level of knowledge we need to share and get out there.
Absolutely.
Because these people have got the best of intentions, But if you don't know what you don't know.
And that's what I always say. You know, I've been, you know, in my time in this industry, heavily around SCBA, you know, respirators and thermal imaging and things, and we recognise that, you know, these people can't be experts in everything. No. You know, I can be expert in one thing because that's easy. You know, and so we realise, you know, that because, like you say, they can be hoodwinked. Like you say, they might have to take people's words for it. So what we're saying is like, well, ask for the things like the test data. Ask for this. This is what it looks like.
What does good look like?
Exactly.
How do I know? Oh, they say it's been tested here, and Dave was telling me, like, you then go and look at that place. That's not even a registered test centre.
Exactly.
It's got a name on it and an address, and you go, I'm assuming
it must be good. Yeah,
they wouldn't lie.
No, they wouldn't.
And lies are a very difficult word. They're probably not. They're interpreting.
They're playing on sort of certain tests that might portray to have a certain performance, which it doesn't.
I remember looking at the Grenfell stuff, and they were talking about the test rigs.
Yeah.
The thing, and it was so, you were like, it was tested. I mean, it failed. Yeah. But it was, and all it says is it was tested to this standard. It failed, by the way, but it was tested.
And people admit these things. So, and I also think to myself, well, why are they going to take my word for it? So from my point of view, it's like, so we're going to do these seminars, but I'm going to get the Dave Matthews, the Russ Shepherds, as well as the other industry, like, you know, Hertfordshire University. Yeah. And I'm saying, you know, what we're saying is, look for this, look for that. That's what good does look like. It has to be registered on like that website, etc. Yeah. And that's what we mean by the education. And last September, I was flying really, because at the end of it, it was like, I never knew that. I know what to do. We now need to look at that. And people said, I was about to purchase that product. I'm not now, you know, and it was really emphatic. And I drove home, a long drive back to Lancashire, and I thought, wow, I've done my job.
Yeah,
because these things are nerve-wracking, you know, because you know you want them to go well, and people think it's worthwhile, and I think we really went a long way in achieving, and that's why we're doing it again now, and it's even bigger, you know.
So much of this, for people listening and watching, might feel like we're pointing fingers at senior leaders, blaming that they're in a very difficult position. A lot of this actually, as well, can lie within the sphere of control of the individual, the behavioural stuff, things that I'm doing, things your son is or isn't doing, you know, the things we should be doing. Fire and rescue service and firefighting, it's a very emotive thing. People get very passionate about it. You know, accountants don't necessarily tell all their friends that they're an accountant. The old joke is, how do you know if you're around a firefighter? They'll tell you. You don't need to worry about it. They're going to tell you.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate that side of the bravado, the behavioural side of, you know, you actually don't need to stink of smoke. You know, shower after the hour, not having soot all over your face. You know, being a consummate professional is having professionally cleaned fire kit, and a professional that can be in the job for 30 years.
Yeah, and I say it was your badge of honour before, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wearing dirty kit.
It was when I joined.
And you know what? It's a very salient point, because so as you say, my son's a firefighter. I'm his dad. Yeah. I've been ramming him down his throat since he joined, and it wasn't until he came to the last seminar when it makes you think, doesn't it, Dad? I was like, it does. But I've been telling you this, right? But sometimes they need to hear it from the individuals that have gone through it, and I get that.
It's that authenticity, isn't it?
It is. So if I can't even, although I'm sure he listens to me, but I said to him, do you still put your gloves in your helmet? He went, yeah. And here's his dad who's making a living out of providing particulate protection, and you're like, and that tells me, and it was kind of a good thing, really. It is a behavioural thing as well. It's not just here's this bit of kit, use it, because it's what you do in between, isn't it? Like you say, showering in the hour, and all these other measures that you can take. What
makes me really optimistic is I feel that we're at the crest of a wave of, we're doing so much recruitment in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. We've reached that kind of cyclic time where so many people are retiring. This is the best time to get that information out there.
100%. Because
I was speaking to a chief fire officer the other day, and they said like 60% of their workforce is going to change over in the next 5 or 6 years. So all of those old behaviours, and again, if we'd have known better, we'd have done better. We didn't know, so we just did that. So, but now, to proliferate, to promote, to share this information, to do what you're doing today is the best time to be doing it, because that will be the new culture. That will be the new approach.
It will be. And you do need that generation. Like you say, you made the analogy of seatbelts earlier on. It's so true, because again, I'm of that age, sadly. I remember when they first came into force, and people still didn't wear them. But now it's just an instinctive thing, isn't it?
Yes.
Nobody thinks of not wearing a seatbelt, you know. And we want to get to that stage here where
drink driving was the same, you know, all that sort of stuff.
It's now, almost just like, just be careful, you know. Now it's just socially
23 and 18. They would never even dream of it,
because it's become so socially unaccepted.
Yes.
You know, and again, it's almost just like if you wear you see the old cyclist not wearing a helmet. The fact that they don't wear them looks more out of place.
Yes.
Than before. And it's that's where we want to get to, where it's just
and
instinctive.
We kind of made that cool. And what I mean as well by this is, I want to make it respectable that you're a professional firefighter that looks after those aspects of it.
Absolutely.
If you see someone on the parade line and they stink, not because of BO, because of their fire kit or whatever, it should be a reflection on their professionalism, not, James or Sally's had a great job last night, smelling. You'd be looking at them like, what do you think you're doing? I'm not getting on the back of the fire engine with you.
Yeah, you're contaminating your off gas.
Sort your life out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Be a goddamn professional.
Yeah. And that's what we absolutely need to get to. But, and I don't mind admitting there's still some of that culture out there, albeit it is changing, hopefully, and slowly. And I think, and again, not to keep mentioning it, but it's like there is that bravado side of things. And I see it because at that age as well, he's 23, he thinks he's bulletproof.
Of course.
I did at that age. Then you realise I'm not.
Every now and again, I still have that mistake of thinking I'm bulletproof.
We do,
and then I get the twinges and everything else.
Yeah, and then, like you say, and then when you hear like from the horse's mouth, like from Robbie, and that's what I said at the beginning in my opening sort of remarks, that listening to people's journey, and it's not, we all think about cancer, and it's such a horrible thing that affects 1 in 2 of us, and for you guys even more so. It's almost it's crazy, but it's the effect it has on the family and the wider side of things and your colleagues. And I think that's what some people don't often think about, and why would you, until you hear them talk about the story. And I don't mind admitting, last year, my hair's on my neck standing on, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is.
We released this episode only yesterday, and just the emails and the messages just has been off the chain. I can't keep up with. It's ridiculous, and that's no reflection on me or us. It's him, and it's all about the people. We learn through stories, though. That's how the Bible was written. We learn through fables, through stories, because it's authentic. It's the sell versus the tell. Someone's staying in there and telling you. I always say to people, if you hear 1,000 children starving in a country somewhere, it's just a number. It doesn't mean anything. But you hear the story of the one individual, of Malala Yousaf, and you go, wow.
Yeah, it becomes real.
It becomes real.
It's not a statistic; it's a real thing.
And I wish Robbie was wrong. I wish he was wrong. I wish it was BS. I wish it wasn't. And it's frustrating and annoying that it is right.
Yeah.
But now we know.
Absolutely.
And he's not alone. He's just has the fortitude and the values to want to come out and be able to come out and share his story. The cognitive load, the family stress, everything that he must be going through. It's even today to be here. And I think he's not the only.
No.
There's just so many people that are just trying to prioritize their own life, just trying to get through the thing. The ability for him to come and share it's incredible.
And I've got to know Robbie really well over the last sort of year or two. And every now and again you give him a call and he's ill and you can hardly talk. And this guy's got so much fortitude. He won't let life get him down. And then suddenly I'm not talking about work. We're not talking about anything. It's just like, wow, and I worry about him, and you think, well, I didn't know him until a couple of years or so ago, and he's become someone you really connect with, and I'd like to think he's now a friend almost, because of this, and and he respects what we do and everything, and it doesn't become about a business anymore at that point. And again, I don't mind admitting, I say it to everybody, I love this industry, and it's why we work with John Lord and people, because there's such a passion about, and it's simple, firefighter safety. And doing our best. I mean, it's a dangerous job you do. We know we can't eliminate 100% of the risk, but I always say we've got to do things that are practicable, that are easy to do, and also not actually terribly expensive. Yeah. To do the right thing. We can't. You can't tick every single box. We know that. But for me, it's still astonishing to most of us that when you've got so many fire services now taking on particulate protection as well as other measures, and you still walk into the odd major service, I'm not talking somewhere out the sticks. Yep. And they go, And you're like, what? Yeah. And I walk out there sometimes like, oh, wow, I was not expecting that, I expect that and we're here to help as well. Like you say, doing these seminars, they are not cheap. No. But they will give them everything, hopefully, or the start of what they need in their whole education of this and where they need to be. But more importantly, the networking. Yeah. So for example, Robbie did like so much research into this before they went to tender, and he's happy to share all that. He can most of the work's done. So engage with your wider colleagues. All that information gets passed on, and you can make a better informed choice. That's what we're saying. You know, it's it should be that simple.
I think it's incredible. It's a real privilege to be here today, mate. There's so many, I think, like crowdfunding knowledge, because I go in there and I hear so many people, and I almost get then filled with a sense of guilt, because I'm like, I wish I was recording that. It's weird, because I'm like, someone else needs to hear that.
Yeah.
And that's the irony of how many people go away from here, and a few they'll pass it on and pass it on. It's the whole connection, they'll pass it down the line. But I'm like, so many people won't hear this. No. That's why it's so incredible to capture stuff you said today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing, mate.
And thank you for what you're doing. It's brilliant what you're doing. And I know lots of people tune in and listen to it, and I listened to the Dave Matthews one. That was brilliant. So no, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
No worries.
Russell Shepherd, and I'm from AFAC in Australia.
So Russell, we were just speaking about a close friend, Dave Matthews, who I had him on the podcast. Really passionate about getting the facts and the figures out there, and we were speaking about people working in procurement and how just the knowledge base isn't there sometimes because there's so many new people. You're just giving a great talk around procedures, around legislation, around the standards. What is it you think a lot of people probably aren't aware of, certainly in the UK Fire and Rescue Service? I feel like we're 1 step or 2 steps behind Australia and 5 steps behind maybe the US. What is it, the things that really make you pull your hair out and frustrate you when you hear some of the misinformation that's maybe out there?
I think it's probably goes back to when we had similar problems in Australia, and those problems were people really didn't understand what was required in relation to doing the procurement of PPE for firefighters. So it's not simply just about getting best value for money, or buying this kit because it actually complies with that or whatever. It's about making sure that the processes are in place to identify which is the best kit, which is compliant with the right standards, find that evidence that actually proves and shows that it actually is compliant with the standard, and don't believe anyone. Check it for yourself to make sure that it's right. And a lot of this is what I've worked with Dave over the years, and because Dave's known about what I've introduced in Australia and how we've done it, and so therefore I get involved in a lot of those tender processes in Australia to make sure that we do that. And one of the things that we do is we say, okay, we're going to tender. I'll use New South Wales Fire and Rescue as the best example. That's the last big one I did. We had 21 different combinations that were provided in the tender process for the tender for structural PPC. 21. So therefore you look at that, and then you think, okay, 21 garments, that's cool. We'll work through that process, but it's not that simple. You've got to work because we call for and request that they must provide all the test reports. So the test reports come to us as well, and any other documentation that supports that. So we look at that.
A lot of people think it ends there, though, because that aspect of the track and trace beyond that, and I've seen this in services where we've got the test records, but then the facility that it was tested at, and the fact some of these they're not even registered. They're not. Sure. They've provided you with the thing. There's a name. There's an address. There's a company name.
You'll remember what I said in there a minute ago. It's about making sure that it's an appropriate, independent testing authority. That's why. I mean, we're aware that you can get test reports come out of a lab in the UK, and they'll provide you a test certificate as well. Well, no, that's not okay. And in actual fact, I want to go and check those test reports to make sure that they've got it right, because I can tell you on a number of occasions I've found that they've got it wrong. So we have to do our due diligence to go through that process, make sure that what they're providing is what we're actually asking for, and then you do a technical analysis of all that information. You saw that spreadsheet I had in there. Yeah. Well, I had one of those for 21 different combinations. And you've got to work through which is a pass, which is a fail, how they all perform, rank them from 21 down to, if they don't comply and they fail, that's easy because you just get rid of it. But then you've got all these other ones and you've got to work through that process. You can't believe anyone. You want to see the evidence. You want to make sure that you can validate and make sure that that evidence is there and is what it's you've asked for.
I know this is such an emotive subject for so many people, and there's so many lenses that you could look through with this. But I think what we were lacking for probably a couple of decades, but we're certainly seeing come to the floor in the last 5 or 6 years, is the data. Universities getting involved, World Health Organization, big hitters, big companies, big organizations, with a lot of data behind them. We were hearing in the room today, I don't want to believe it. And this is the frustrating thing, because not just because of the financial cost, because when we say cost, people think money, because of the cost that I know I will have. I've been an operational firefighter for 17 years. It's that I know what I've been doing wrong. And it's an upsetting reality to know what I've been exposing myself to. So it is very emotive to realise that we've been doing something wrong. I always say if we'd have known better, we'd have done better. But now we know better. So we've got to do better. But it's a behavioural shift. It's a mindset shift. It's a procedural shift. It's a heavy lift.
And some people you won't get to shift.
Why?
Some people, because I think they have this image that, they join the fire service, they're a firefighter, they just do what firefighters have always done.
The bravado to it.
Yeah. And in that...
We don't think that with like accountancy or even rope rescue though, right? There's something about firefighting. We think, it's dangerous,
But people who go into those other areas have a passion for that. Mm-hmm. And that's what drives them, I mean, when I first started as a firefighter back in 1976, one of the first fires I ever went to was and we had respiratory protection then on the trucks, we had BA. Went to what we call it was a shop that sold cheese. So and all the cheese is wrapped in plastic, yeah?
Right.
And this place went up. And of course, so as a young firefighter, you get out of the truck, do what you're trained to do, grab the BA, go in, and the senior officer drags you back and says, "You don't need that, son. Just get in there." I'm not saying that attitude is there anymore,
no.
but there's a little bit of it, It's about, and it's not from a senior officer
Well, I think
level.
we think that fixed it.
Yeah.
You put the set on, so whilst you're in the thing, you're protected, and then you come out, because it is very much like, and I keep using this analogy, but it's like you go in on the edge of the roof, wear the harness. You're not on the edge of the roof, don't worry about the harness anymore. You're going into the fire, wear the set. You're out the fire, you're fine now. But you're not.
No, you're not.
You're still covered in the thing. It's in your
Whatever
pores. It's all over your body.
Whether
it's
you're
on
in the hot
set.
zone or you're wearing PPE that's actually been contaminated, we've dealt with the issues of contamination of asbestos for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fire services have done that pretty well over the years.
Yeah.
We've managed that quite well. That was
What's that taken?
That was
25 years?
Yeah, but
It's
that
a
was
long time now.
Oh yeah, that was identified in by the World Health Organization as well. But I think it's an area that we've come to terms with. It's all this other stuff that we've not known about, and the exposures and how it actually gets into the clothing, how it gets into the pores of your skin, all those things. And we've got to. But the only way we can make change is to educate people and educate them about what may happen.
Mm-hmm.
And PPE. I would have said to you going back 10 years ago, if anyone started raising issues about, we're going to have PPE with problems with exposures to contaminants going through. We got moisture barriers, we got everything. It's not going to happen, but it is happening now, and we're starting to see some of that information coming out that's showing that there is exposures. PPE is not performing the way it should do. If we go back to when I joined the fire service, we used to run around in training in asbestos suits because that's what you used for those high volatile. Now I got to live with the fact that I wore asbestos suits when I was a young firefighter. Well, am I going to get asbestos? I don't know, But so things change. PPE changes. I think we're moving in the right direction and we're making the right changes, but we have to educate people as we move along. Mm-hmm. And what I was talking about in there about people with a self-interest and not focused on what's best for the firefighter, we have to get that out. And we've got to...
Well, it's an admittance that I've accidentally, not out of malice, but I've built my house in the wrong place, or I built my house on sand. I've based a business, a product on something that now has unfortunately been proven not to be effective, and I've got to disassemble the house, move it and build it again over there. or I can just try and stretch it out and skew the lens and fog it over a little bit. And I can appreciate 100% these people have lifetime investment in this, and their whole livelihood is built on it. But the people that are paying the cost are the firefighters. I know we haven't got time to read these studies. The firefighters, we're not knowledgeable on this sort of stuff. And which is a shame as well, because as you alluded to in there, so much of this is behavioural.
Yes.
It's in your sphere of control as an operational firefighter. You can do a lot of things to help yourself out. It's easy to point fingers at organisations, PPE providers, chiefs of fire services. It's harder to point thumbs at yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, the greatest example of that, which has been my big bugbear for so long, is firefighters' helmets. Now, helmets are usually a Kevlar or some type of material like that. For too long, and I continue to see it now, fire trucks driving around the street with the helmet sitting on the front top part of the dash of the truck. Yeah. What's happening with those helmets is they're actually getting the sun coming through, the UVs hitting those helmets, impacting the performance of those helmets to the point where if they were tested under a requirement to determine the impact resistance, would they pass? Chances are they may not.
I never even thought about that. Yeah.
So it's something that, but people don't, because it's a good place to put my helmet, or it's a good place to line my coat, But the coat is an aramid. It's a fibre that is impacted by light, sunlight, UV light, all those sorts of things. But I'll just light across the dash because it's convenient.
This is one of those things you just don't think about. We're given all of this stuff, and I've done it, mate. I've done it for years. I chuck everything on the front, my bag, my respirator. We've got so much stuff to carry around with us, and I'm making excuses. We need to make that environmental shift. And to be fair, on a lot of the new fire trucks in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, the Incident Commander's kit, so for me, sitting front left, there is a locker I can put it in. So it's just laziness for me that I just want to climb. I can get dressed on the way though. No, I'll get there. I shouldn't be jumping off and running straight at the thing anyway. I'm going to get off. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to make an assessment. I'm going to read the scene, all that jazz. I don't need to be throwing it on the way and jumping straight off and exposing myself straight away.
But you know what impacts on that too, and what makes it worse, and it's another thing that I've challenged for a long, long time, is that a lot of our people fought to have BAs in the back of trucks. It's the worst thing we ever did. Because when you've got BA outside of the truck, and you actually go to put your BA on after you hop out of the truck, you're actually taking time to assess the scene, to actually look what's happening. And it just takes those few minutes that are valuable. And plus, like yesterday, the truck in the engine bay, how many steps is that? 4 steps up to get in the thing?
Yeah.
And you got BA on, I've got problems with my neck just from wearing BA for a long time. So there is things that I think we can do differently. People might argue other, points of view, but I think we have to look at alternatives. We have to look at best practice. We've got to look at how we can do those things, and if we can learn from others and share that information and work together to achieve that, then that's what we need to do.
Talk to me about the aftercare side of stuff. How we're looking after these garments and this PPE, how we're washing it. If it looks clean, smells clean, it's clean. That's kind of conditioned to us. I throw my stuff in the wash. That's it though, isn't it? I'm saying, like, environmentally, as a kid, I put it in the washing machine, it comes out.
It's got to be clean.
A bit wet and it smells clean. Okay, it's clean. I don't test it. I don't know anything about it. And that's bled over into, we'll just wash it hotter. We'll just wash it longer. What, I know I'm being a bit facetious there. Help me and people like me, firefighters, understand what's the difference. How should we be cleaning this stuff? Is it clean? Is it not clean? There's lots of percentages being thrown around about how clean it is or isn't. What's the data? And again, we're not going to name companies and organisations, but what's the general figures about how clean is this kit?
Look, I think organisations who put into place cleaning and maintenance systems and work with companies that specialise in that cleaning and maintenance approach, I think we're making good grounds. And I think we can almost safely say that when it's been through that system, the gear is coming back clean, and free of contaminants. However, not all systems are the same. Not all companies are as due diligent in relation to how it's done. We've also got fire services that will say, well, I got to comply with ISO 23616. I'll just go down to our local provider and put some washing machines in fire stations and the guys can wash it there.
Because we're so focused on the hazard is when I'm at the scene, then it smells, then it's bad. Once I've sent it for cleaning, I've sent it for cleaning though, so problem's over.
It should be
solved.
fine.
Yeah, it comes back, it's clean. That, and it looks clean. Do you know what I mean? But that is the bit that I think we've never really fully considered before, because we've never thought to test it afterwards.
And that's what has to happen. And the requirements that are built into NFPA 1851, if you like, are those. So there is periodic testing that actually has to be done to show that they are actually cleaning the gear, so that it's actually occurring. 23616 doesn't go that far, but it is actually moving some way towards that. So evidence has to be found to make sure that the protective clothing and the hoods and all that sort of thing are being cleaned and cleaned appropriately. Whether it's your helmets and the liners of the helmets or whatever it is, your gloves, etc. I think we're moving, as long as people follow that guidance and follow that general principle, then I think we're far better off than where we were. Are we where we need to be? Probably not yet. There is only a small number, I think, that are. I helped Fire and Rescue New South Wales put in their cleaning system in Australia. And
What are they doing?
I've seen a number of them across the world, and I reckon their system is probably the best that I've ever seen. It's the way it's actually collected. It's the way that it's actually processed through the cleaning facility, step by step. The way it's actually, you bring it into a room like this, the room has all the appropriate ventilation systems and recycled air that goes through the purifiers and you name it. Then it goes to the next stage and then it goes into the cleaning area, all segregated, works through the process, and then it comes out of the machines and goes into a drying room where it's on racks where it just rotates through a system and dries naturally and with a certain amount of air, hot air coming through at a certain temperature. It's all those processes and all those steps that make the system work and that you can be confident that you're getting the product at the end of the day. They also then periodically will go through a process of doing some testing on those garments that go through there to see if there is anything still on them or in them. And they do that. So it's about step by step, then validating what you've done to make sure it actually delivers the right outcome. So so therefore there's another number of companies that operate around the world that have similar systems, but they're not all the same, and they don't necessarily all adhere to doing it every time the same way, so and so. The other thing that made it easier for the likes of Fire and Rescue New South Wales was they went from a system of every firefighter owning his own or her own kit. Yeah.
Okay.
They don't anymore. It's a pooled system that a firefighter can go onto their app, and when they submit their gear for cleaning and it's gone through the system, they will access that same kit in their size that is fit for purpose, that is ready for use, and be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They use an app-based system, do they?
Yes.
Wow. And then you just order your new one, put it in for cleaning.
Yep.
Why would we not? Do you know what I mean? The technological age we're in now.
But the real positive about that?
Go on.
firefighter in a big organisation would get 2-3 sets of kit to make sure that they've got enough. Yeah, it actually reduces cost.
Yeah.
You can deliver a better product, better outcome, safer for firefighters, and they've got access to the PPE that fits them, their size, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
I think embracing innovations such as that is one of many, probably big, marginal gains that will really see us continue to move in the direction that we should be. Russ, thanks so much for your time today, mate. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the trip over.
Thank you very much.
Today's podcast is powered by our partner Lifelines and their revolutionary approach to functional hydration. Just like in firefighting, water is essential for body function, but studies show more than 80% of firefighters are dehydrated. A 25-year study findings from the National Institute of Health showed poor hydration to be linked to early aging and chronic disease, and even mild dehydration results in significant negative impact outcomes including headaches, exhaustion, rapid pulse, irritability, and poor cognitive function. A study conducted by Yale University showed that participants who were just 1% dehydrated had a 12% increase in errors when performing tasks that required cognitive flexibility. In addition, dehydration is shown to worsen mood and attitude, contribute to confusion and poor decision making, and negatively affect memory and judgment. In other words, you really don't want your incident commander, firefighter, or for that matter any first responder on a critical scene to be even slightly dehydrated. Mild dehydration occurs when a person is just 1.5% dehydrated, a condition that does not even trigger the thirst response in most people. So just imagine how quickly a firefighter or any first responder can and does become dehydrated in their day-to-day duties, which is why I address my hydration first thing every day with Lifelines. Go into the notes for this episode and specifically check out Lifelines Hydro Fuel and Hydro OG by clicking in the notes for the podcast for a clean energy solution designed for those who demand more from their day. Now back to the show.
Adam Stone.
And
Alan Bentman.
so, fellas, we're here looking at all the decontamination stuff. For me, I mean, we've all been in the services for 10 plus years at least. I've been about 17 years. I know you both sort of LFB Babcocks. Things have changed dramatically since we've been in. I remember going to skip fires and just getting my head over the top with an open end over my shoulder, stamping around in it and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. What have you seen go from and to? As an example, in London, how much have things moved along? The garments have moved along, the cabs have moved along. London is a massive beast. Lots of people in there trying to do the right thing, but it's a confusing landscape, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. I think from a London Fire Brigade perspective, we were probably one of the first FRSs to introduce a fire contaminants policy, and part of that was, you know, the education. So look at the first phase of the project to say, look, this is the education. This nasty smoke is actually really carcinogenic, and obviously to bring awareness that the World Health Organization that a firefighter occupation is carcinogenic. It's the highest rating that they've given for bladder cancer, obviously mesothelioma, and there's obviously strong research to suggest other cancers as well. And, you know, firefighters now, actions are changing on the incident ground. We've given them the education, trying to give them the basic tools from wipes to bags. You know, we're bagging BA sets, you know, we're wearing BA more. We're certainly seeing respirators being used on larger jobs, but equally, you know, there's people that still don't use them, unfortunately, and it's, you know, it's getting that buy-in from other people.
We were just saying, weren't we, in another room, like that behavioural thing, that's like 50-60%. I mean, it's easy for us as firefighters to point the fingers at senior leaders and organisations and go, oh, you're not buying me this, you're not giving me that, you need to spend another $100,000 on this. We're not saying that without fault. We're trying to find the right answers, trying to get the right PPE, trying to get the right decon procedures, particulate flash hoods and all that sort of jazz. What's the behavioural side? What's the low-hanging fruit that you see firefighters doing, like when we're training firefighters? What's the stuff we're still not listening about? What's the stuff we're like, come on, I've given you the thing, I've told you the thing.
So like we've said, it's a changing landscape. It's all relatively new to us, as in, like I said, 18 years ago, I joined the fire service, and I've got some really great war photos of me covered in stuff that now I wouldn't be seen dead.
You go home and your kids would be like, oh, Daddy, you stink smoke, and you'd be like, yeah, it's because I'm in a job.
Yeah, I've been at this job.
Bravado, you know, but that, I just think to myself, you know, gassing off in the back of my car when I'm picking my kids up after school and stuff, and I'm just like, what the frickin' hell was I doing?
But what we've got to acknowledge is the fact that these are changes that we haven't seen before, and it's now an evolving landscape where, you had it on the news yesterday, there's 100 firefighters that have been what was the they were given compensation for their trauma and everything else and personal injury that they've experienced from Grenfell. Like, that's
still
a
thing,
huge
like,
step.
we didn't know, so we didn't do. But if we'd have known better, we'd have done better.
Yeah.
Now we've got the data, we've got the UCLAN reports, we've got the WHO, and I wish it wasn't true. I'm just telling my personal opinion. I wish it wasn't true because I'm like, I've got to admit, I didn't know I've been doing it wrong for so long. And it's one of those things, the whole chronic aspect of it, isn't it? It's like, and I always use the analogy of like a harness or a seatbelt. Like, you don't wear a harness, fall through, immediate feedback, you hit the ground, game over. This sort of stuff, it is like smoking, it is like whatever, obesity. Like, you don't see it for ages.
It's hidden. It's a hidden killer.
Years and years down the line, you go, oh, it's the old asbestosis analogy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like,
Well, this is the next asbestosis. Let's be honest. This is going to be the thing that kills firefighters predominantly moving forward.
Yeah. And we know a lot of people moving into retirement now, and they're just cropping up, and people are like, oh, have you heard about so-and-so? Have you heard about so-and-so? But I think we'll see it in people in service. Like, yeah, I've done 17 years, but I'm only 33. So I might still do another 20 years yet.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be seeing firefighters, especially as we're pushing back the retirement age, they're going to see this in their career.
Well, you've only got to look at what Robbie Burns was saying earlier.
Yeah.
Like, there's 4 on his
40s.
station.
Yeah.
And if you look at, like, me now, I work for Babcock, obviously. I'm a CFBTI. My exposure levels are far greater than what a normal firefighter on the fire station are.
And that's an uncomfortable truth as well. I'm a CFBT, I'm a BAI, doing 15, 20 hot wares a month, carcinogenic ones we're doing in live fire training, then we're doing the reaccreditations in TAC vent units, and then we're doing some gas rigs as well. And it's just that aspect of, well, I need more staff.
What
saying you can't do it
have you got in place for what medicals have you got in place for your...
So, well, we obviously have UKRSS, so we do all the vaccinations, we do the annual medicals, but you just do your fitness test and you just do, I think that's it. We're not doing, you see some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
We're not doing blood testing. We're not doing all of this stuff. There's so much more that is now made available to us. And the information's there, but it's just such an unknown thing that's growing exponentially.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time in terms of the behavioural change is also the enforcement of a policy and doing that and having that culture change.
So when is it the should versus the must?
Exactly.
Like, if I see you not wearing your helmet a few times inside the inner cordon, I'm gonna have a curt conversation with you, and then next time I'm gonna pull you off it. So I get back in a truck. Yeah, you're not safe to be on this incident ground. I've had a conversation with you a few times, and then I pull you in the watchroom. We have a different conversation. Then it's P&C. If I see you keep putting your helmet and your gloves, if I know you're not showering, if I know you're not using the wipes when you're coming out of the job,
it should be
is
the
that
same thing.
where we need to be going?
Exactly.
Do we want to make it that? I want you to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Exactly, and I think you've got that. It's that legal versus moral obligation about what we do, and I think certainly on the incident ground there are excellent people that are doing an excellent job in terms of enforcing that policy and that level of control, and how we manage the incident ground now has got to change. Having that simple salvage sheet on the incident ground with wipes and things like that attracts the firefighters. You put a sub officer or a station officer in charge of it and say, look, you're far too contaminated, come out with your PPE. But it's ensuring that you don't create that secondary risk on the incident ground that you haven't got enough people.
This is it, the early makeup, because someone comes out, you can't, before it's like, you feeling all right? You want to swap your cylinder out, go back in? Because now it's like one fire engine per BA crew. And then it's like, well, you're done. Have you got any spare kit on the truck? No, in which case you're done. You need to go back and get some more kit.
It comes down to the resourcing in terms of, right, we need to get that first truck, the initial truck that turns up, that's got the most contamination on, can we get them away? Because this shower within the hour of returning to station...
And that's not to say they're totally unavailable. It's about how quickly can you turn them around? How quickly can you get them to a shower? How quickly can we turn the kit around? Sorry, I interrupted you, mate. Go on, you're about to say something.
And I think, in terms of what we do on the incident ground, you've got the focal point. People are doing those things. How we manage the incidents and stuff. In terms of we're trying to do things properly, but ultimately we've got the right balance of risk in that if there is a life risk in that property, we are, and that's the difficult risk appetite of where people are in terms of. If there's a life risk, we're there to try and save life. That's where we'll do 2 BA wares potentially, and that's the only justification for it.
Okay, yeah.
But then if there's still savable life, then obviously, you've got to do
My frustration is, we'll all have different risk appetites. I think people that are attracted to the fire and rescue service probably have a slightly higher risk appetite, but I also see the socio-economic of that building. So, hotel on fire, central London, how many people work for that company? How many people are going to be displaced? How many people are going to lose their jobs because I don't want to send someone in to get contaminated? I can save the building. I can stop the fire spread. Maybe I can keep that to 2 or 3. Maybe I can keep it to 1 floor. So there is still, this is the frustration. That's why I'll be honest, pushing back to some of the speakers today. There's no one in there, don't send anyone in. I don't think we want to get there, and feel free not to give your opinions, but I personally feel like I don't want to get there, because if we just need to control it more, because it's like a hazmat job. It is a hazmat job. All this stuff on fire in there is all carcinogenic stuff. But we'll just treat it like the hazmat job. We're still going to do something. We just need to do it in a more controlled manner. We just need to get the infrastructure there.
Yeah, and I think when you look at firefighting tactics across the UK, London is a huge beast in the sense of the risks profile that it's got, the number of personnel
Huge.
to deal with, to get that training out there, to
Dissipate
get it
that learning so hard.
to over 90% of our staff, including FRS non-uniform staff, they've had the awareness training of again, when you say the exposure of firefighters. The trainers get more exposure. There's also the people that clean and maintain our sets. We have fire engineers that are non-uniform staff and fire safety officers that go into these buildings that have got, again, and stuff like that. And that's unusual for me, and that's something that's new. And to
it's the forgotten people. I always think of it like Trim, where we forgot about the control operators and people that weren't at the scene that were affected by it. It's still the factor with this.
It's again, we're trying to look after our staff and things like that, but also in terms of our firefighting tactics, again, every FRS is different. If there's no life risk, do they just stick jets from there on the outside to mitigate preventing exposures and things like that? In London we had various air monitoring. We've done a lot of the phase 2 type stuff. Where you're looking at medicals, you're looking at the assurance of our wash processes and things like that, in terms of our new technology that's out there for washing, liquid CO2, or whether that's ozone or anything like that, and the efficacy behind that. In terms of what facilities, as firefighters, we like to see tangible change, but actually what it is the policy of the decon process that you go through. Is a lot of it. As firefighters, we like to see these nice shiny things, and whether it's
give me a physical solution.
A BA wash plant, for example,
yeah.
A BA wash plant is excellent. It's good because that's a primary source of contamination. That's really good, but ultimately, it's what suits an organisation like London. It needs to be quick, because you don't necessarily want to be 2 hours off or 3 hours off the run because you've got to clean.
I think that's the same for every organisation. They need that quick turnaround. We've reduced our crewing, we've reduced our stations to skeleton in places. So now you say, oh, well, I need 3 hours out for this truck. I need them on the run. I need them on the run. I mean, think about airports. As soon as they put a truck off the run, the categorisation is gone.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds. They will lose him fast.
Yeah, and we know that the policy in London isn't perfect, but it's always developing. And I think as long as firefighters recognise that it is a developing policy, research is changing, trying to get equipment in. But at least you've got that education, you've got that policy to do, and you've got that awareness. The next stage is those things that we can try and get, those niceties and things like that. But manufacturers have also got to understand and help us. They
have got to pick up a part to play in this, 100%.
In terms of whatever processes are audited, we've had Russ Shepherd on, with the standards and things like that, making sure that, we go to a manufacturer, they'll just supply you as a certificate for fire kit. Actually, no, I want to understand each individual item that's been tested and where you've had it tested from.
That way you've had it tested, Dave Matthews, we had on the podcast, and a colleague of Russ's, you go down the rabbit hole of the certification that they provide, and they go, it's this test centre. You go on the website, test centre's not even registered. And I feel so bad for those people in procurement, in large brigades, large services. They're new into role. We all know how quickly people are getting promoted now. People are retiring all the time. And you're in a job that you don't have a full understanding of the context of it. I'm not saying we're all incapable, inadequate, incompetent, but we've got to be relying on people like that and these manufacturers to be telling us the truth. Otherwise it's the blind leading the blind, and we're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on stuff that isn't what it says on the tin.
Yeah, and there's universities like Hertfordshire University. They're very good on CBRN and where wipes are and things like that. There's there is a fog of amount of research that's out there, but it's also just understanding and picking out what research is good and what research is bad. But ultimately, when you look at it, Canada and Australia, those places like that have already made it presumptive.
They seem to be further ahead.
It's presumptive
miles
legislation.
ahead. With
miles
the
ahead.
legislation stuff and with equipment and processes. But why we're not going, right, okay, they've done the research, they've done the work, why don't we just incorporate that into our...
I think we're getting better at that. I mean, the fact you guys and your organisations are willing to send you here today and that we are investing time in that, we obviously have an appetite for it. But it feels like baby steps. It feels like glacial change, because the organisations are so big. Change and cultural change takes years and years and years in our services.
Yeah, exactly. We train when we initiated the policy. We had to do all the personnel that were currently on station, but every recruit now gets it. Gets the process from.
That's where it starts.
And that's where it
I
starts.
think I was speaking
and that
when I was
phase
down
will
at
happen.
Babcock's. They said 24 recruit courses they've got coming through in the year or something like that. Each one has got, I don't know what it was, 12 people. Oh my, 300 staff.
Yeah.
Wow. That is just colossal. And I know it's relative to the size. London's got 6,000 staff or something, but it's a big lift, to push all that information out there. But it also gives me a sense of hope. I feel like we're on the precipice of a big wave of change because so many people are retiring. We're doing so much recruitment that the people that struggle to get out of the behaviours or are ingrained in old behaviours, they're probably retiring now anyway. And we wish it had been different for them, and we hope they don't encounter some of these problems in their retirement. But I think that's why it's so important that we're leaning in so much now, and London and Babcock's are leaning in and trying to look and get best practice, because we have a great opportunity to start as we mean to go on with all these new recruits.
Yeah, exactly, and they want to, you want that healthy in, healthy out.
Yeah.
I think mentality,
100%.
and how important diet is, and things like that. That there's contributing factors.
Of course,
and that's getting that occupational. That what has caused my cancer? Is it occupational or is it just your diet? And that's just
my words, not yours. But there's nothing more frustrating for me
that
than
you hear
seeing
that all the time.
a really fat, overweight, unhealthy firefighter going, "I need better decon. I need better healthcare." Really? That's the problem, is it? And again, these are my words, not yours. But there's some things you've got to take account for yourself. A bit of personal accountability, a bit of personal discipline. Be a professional firefighter.
And this is one of the messages that we echo in training is that it starts with you.
Yeah.
If you're doing the right thing, the team then starts doing the right thing. The team starts doing the right thing. The station starts doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. When I talk to people about the fire contaminants policy, they say, "Oh, it doesn't work. It doesn't work." And I say, "Look, it's the enforcement, but who's responsible for doing it? Watch officer,
No.
or the firefighter?
Yeah.
No, it's you." Under the Health and Safety Work Act, you've got your own responsibilities, your own decision making to say, "Look, if my fire kit looks like this, as per stated in the policy, I can take it off."
Yeah.
And there's no life risk. We're lucky in London that we've got resources. If you take Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, 4 fire trucks, Guernsey got 2. They're not lucky to have those resources at the moment. And where does the fire contaminants policy start and end? And that's the thing, is that we're starting to catch up, but where does that end point finish at some point? What is reasonable? And that's
where do we hand it over to you to do the right thing? Yeah.
To do the right thing and do those things, and there's so many variables to consider. And I'm lucky in London that we go to Terberg's event in Manchester. We've been over to there, Cranfield and places like that. I've gone over to Bruges. Bruges again are amazing. They use liquid CO2 cleaning. Again, they've got trucks with extra PPE on, workwear and things like that, and they've taken those steps. But when you look at London, the logistics of, we could have a 20-pump fire, you could have multiple 6-pump fires going on. It's just such a different beast and a different animal, just purely on the sizes, and they're the challenges.
It is, and I get it. I don't think it's any more or less complex. I just think it's because we're in a different place. It's a bit like if we said we've got a meeting in Scotland in an hour, we're like, well, that's way far away from us. That's just because it's where we are right now. Where we've set ourselves up and how we've set ourselves up is very different to where we'd now realise we'd like to be. So like the LCO2 stuff, it's like, it's a big way away from where we want to be, but it would mean less pool stock, it would mean quicker turnaround time, not all the time taken for drying, And let's forget all of that and go, well, actually, if it is making it cleaner, maybe it's the right thing to do. But nonetheless, to get from here to there, the here to Scotland analogy, it will still take a long time. There's a lot of fundamental changes have got to take place.
100%. And when you look at like the PPE sort of side of things, we get out of a PPE, we need, do you buy extra PPE or do you look at investing in new processes and things like that? London are, at this current time looking at BA wash plants and things like that. That's a great step. That's taken a long time to get to that way, and hopefully our training partners will follow that way and things like that. So that'll be an excellent, it adds that, it takes that human element out of the cycle, because we've all been guilty where we've gone to that car fire, if we've even worn BA at a car fire, to say, we'll just give it a quick wipe down, change the cylinder and it's back on the truck, and that emphasis of, when you go abroad and places like that, it does not smell. You don't hear it. And I mean, obviously people associate it with exposures and things like that. And it's not completely accurate that way. But, when we start to use the BA wash facilities, when we went through a fact-finding mission, we had manufacturers come in and they supplied us with their BA wash plants. And, OSG, our support group, they went, it doesn't smell anymore. Like the storage area doesn't smell anymore. The drying room doesn't smell anymore.
You're just so conditioned to it. You just assume it should smell that way. It just
should smell that way, and it was like they just feel cleaner. They touch, and we hope that, because we're moving over to our new BA provider shortly, and things like that, that we'll start clean and finish clean, and these sets won't have to go through loads of repairs and things like that, and notice that, irrespective of fire contaminants and it's taking the human element. All you have to do is put the set in a dishwasher effectively, close the lid, stick it on.
15 minutes later.
15, 20 minutes later. That gets you to go get a shower or whatever you need to do. Get downstairs, service your set, and then you're back on the run.
I feel like that's a great starting point for London now, because you're getting a whole new brand new load of sets. Doesn't matter who they're from. It's the fact that, look, we've invested in you, we're getting you brand new stuff, look after it. If you bought it yourself, you'd be looking after it a downside better than you're looking after our stuff. Yeah. And this is brand new stuff.
We've got personal issue face masks now. People have got, that's such a massive step in the right direction. Yeah. Personally, look after your own face mask.
Yeah.
And clean it and maintain it. That's good resilience in terms of, all the COVID, with respect to that, And the BA wash plants can be used for other things if they needed to be. There are other manufacturers out there that use them for boots, gloves, helmets and things like that, because helmets are probably one of the hardest things to clean because of the mixture of materials you've got in there. So it's really difficult.
I want to be respectful of your time, but is there any key takeaways from the people we've spoke to today? Anything that people listening might go, I need to go and look at that? Would you suggest them to go and have a look anywhere, any of the speakers that you've heard today?
To be honest, it's all really... I'm probably different to most firefighters. I do like looking at this stuff and going, right, where can I make improvements? Where can Babcock as a company make improvements for the end user, which is the LFB.
Yeah.
And if we can make improvements at the start and hand them on to LFB, or likewise, if Adam does a lot of research himself, if they can bring in new policies and procedures, which they then present to us, we can put them in.
100%.
So it's just maybe accountability. For each and individual personnel, every person takes accountability for their actions, their procedures, then we're moving in the right direction.
Love it.
I think in terms of presentations today, in terms of Russ, the ISO standards, that's just a big, I've headed that direction. When I started in fire contaminants, it's taken down this deep dark rabbit hole. Or it's a rabbit hole.
It's a whale to try and swallow,
and
isn't
it is, and you're just going, oh Christ, where's this going?
Didn't know that.
Yeah, didn't know that. Didn't know this.
I didn't know what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, and then I've steadily got to PPE, but I think ultimately, for me, as a station officer, it's really important for me, and I feel passionate about it, is in terms of making firefighters healthy. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that respect. So
that's what drives me to want to learn more, because I'm scared to death I'm telling people the wrong thing.
No, exactly.
Not as in I'm going to be held accountable and get sued one day, as in I just don't want that on my moral compass to feel like I've told you the wrong thing because I just didn't know
we
better.
all make mistakes, and I think in terms of an organisation, that we want to make sure that everybody's healthy in, healthy out. I think we've got our own moral obligations to look after ourselves. Yeah. It's not an organisation necessary to look after you; they're to provide the right equipment.
Yeah.
But yourself as an individual has got to take some accountability for everything that we do and be professional in our role. And when you look at like San Francisco and things like that, they introduced the fire service charity there introduced cancer screening and things like that. 1,200 to all their staff. They found 10 that were asymptomatic for cancer. So
we could do that.
And
someone's got to grab hold of it. I know it's going to be hard to do, but
if this legislation comes in that they're talking about, they can't think of a
presumptive legislation.
Yes.
If that comes in, and they'll go, okay, well, what's the first thing we can do then to prevent long-term illnesses? It's early screening.
Early screening.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer.
100%.
But what stops you getting it is doing
money, funding,
and decon and things like that. If you do the decon, your risks are fundamentally reduced, aren't they? When we look at CBRN and things like that, 80% of the stuff is removed by just removing your clothing, and then it's a follow-up shower.
It's connecting those dots and treating these things like a hazmat job, treating these things like a CBRN,
Well, exactly, it is. It's similar connotations. It's asbestosis, the fire retardants that are in there. How often do we go damping down and turning over, and we didn't wear our PE?
No. Well, the danger's gone. We're just damping down.
We're good. We've got gas.
But we wouldn't have known that before.
This
is all
the fire's out.
brand new information.
We've got gas detection on all frontline appliances in London. We've got person issue respirators. You've got BA. When you look at the behaviours of Sweden, that it's actually, I can't remember if it's illegal or not, but they wear BA for the entirety for everything. The job damping down the whole lot.
Yeah.
If we did that, I mean, again, the amount of BA cylinders you'd have to go through to do that logistically is, do we need to make that step and be brave and do it? Or do we actually just say, look, you must wear the respirators,
Do we want to catch up with the world leaders?
Exactly. And that's where I want to be in terms of London is I want to, we are well respected in this field and things like that. And I want to, carry that on and try and push that forward. And, we have made steps in the right direction and hopefully LFB will be a leader for the UK to strive forward. So,
gents, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm Alex Smith from Suffolk Fire and Rescue. I'm the Equipment and Procurement Officer.
I'm Chris Hans, Watch Manager. I'm part of the innovation team in West Midlands Fire Service.
So we heard loads about toxicology, about decontamination. I love that bit about behavioural change. Chris, you were bringing up some good stuff around how we look at behavioural change. I always say the hilarity of firefighters is we don't like the way things are and we don't like change. You had some really good practical solutions, some really good pushbacks.
Yeah.
Because obviously West Mid's massive service, trying desperately to spread that learning, but it's so big, similar to the LFB analogy, trying to get that learning across to everybody is really difficult.
Yeah. It's perspective, really. What I like to get across when I'm with crews on station is that your normality was somebody else's change. I love the story about when they brought flash hoods in and BA, when it was sneered at, you don't know, we don't need them. Yeah. But, imagine trying to take those items off them now, and it'd be an uproar. Yeah. And who would agree with the tactic of letting you, if your ears are burning, it's too hot. Mm-hmm. It's just not feasible these days. So change is inevitable. Whether it's going to happen, it's happening now, whether you like it or not. Mm-hmm. And what you think is your normality and consistency with somebody else's change that resisted against it. If we embark on change together, then we can make it work for ourselves.
Mm. There's always different motivations when it comes to change, Alex. It might be behavioural, it might be financial, it might be logistical. Why do you think we're struggling to grapple with this one? Some people don't believe the data, but now we're getting so many people that are having these effects personally, are having cancer later terms in their career. What do you think is the big barriers that are still stopping us from making these changes?
It was mentioned in the last one where you've got the watch mentality, and that can be a positive and negative in so many different ways. I think it is, like mentioned again in the previous speaker, you've got to find those key links to the person and what motivates that person. We are reactive. The people who join the fire service are reactive. We like to be reactive and we like to solve puzzles. It's getting into that mentality of the people and making it personal. And we have in our service started with our training department first because they are the first contact point for a lot of these people.
I also think we're the most regular contact point. I work in a training department.
Yeah.
All the rear creds, the instinct man rear creds, the whatever. You see a lot of people in the organisation on an annual basis. Whereas if you're different watches, different stations, you might go a couple of years not seeing someone. Yeah. But the training, they should be the tip of the sword. Not that we're the best, but we should procedurally and behaviourally be gold standard.
It's that example setting.
Yeah.
And if you can get your training instructors to set that example from day dot, when they first start meeting people, when they first start seeing a live fire and coming out of that and showing the procedures.
Because whenever you see something different or whenever you see something whatever, the tagline on station is that's what they do in training. Isn't it? Whether that's a new recruit, whether that's someone that's just back for a rear validation.
It is at all levels as well. And it's like, I'm a flexi officer.
Yeah.
It's up to me to point that out on the fire ground. I still see people putting filthy hose reels on the truck without any gloves on. Those things still exist. And if they are the little things that you're seeing, there's a lot more going on that person is doing behind the scenes that you don't pick up on.
Is it because it's a long-term risk, Chris? Because, you say you look at that. If you saw, and I keep using it, I need to come up with an analogy, but I keep thinking of if you saw someone working near the edge and didn't have a harness on, they didn't have work restraint, they weren't in, you'd rest there. Right, come back away from the edge, let's have a quick chat. Not disciplinary, just like, get your head on a swivel, think about it. Why do we not have that same level of reaction when we look at it? Because it's like, oh, Chris, I see you working really hard. I don't want to I feel like I'm being picky. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not an immediate risk, is it? You're not going to fall off the edge of the building.
Yeah, it's a long-term thing and people struggle to relate to something that may happen 30, 40 years later in life. But I think it's the message and how you give it. It's the incremental, everyday exposures that add up to a tangible disease at the end of it, rather than just focusing on you need to be clean on the fire ground. It's got to be for the entire time at work. It's like health and safety. It's everyone's responsibility. You can't take your eye off the ball. You just need to take those marginal gains that are cut down on the transfer of those contaminants into your workplace on the fire ground, and it'll add up to a much reduced level of cancer risk and other diseases when you leave.
What's some of the good low-hanging fruit that you guys and girls have deployed in West Mids? Because there's loads of people going about things, some in their own ways, some in silo working, some things like this where we've got a lot of shared learning. What's some of the good practices you guys and girls have deployed?
Initially, recruit training. We've had to invest vastly more in more PPE kits. So recruits have a clean set of PPE for every day.
Every day?
Yeah.
Wow. Just for live fire training? Or
Yeah. So,
okay.
So it's warm for live fire training and then it goes away. Okay. Staff in the background, they've worked tirelessly to try and rearrange certain training, so live fire theory, live fire to take the pressure off the turnaround of the kit. But it's not perfect yet.
Because it was just...
just
don't take it home.
Yeah, back in the
we'll
day,
leave it in the room, and if you want to dry it, put it in the drying cabinet.
Yeah.
But you came in the morning, you walk past the room, you're like, it stinks.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, you had two sets, so you had a dirty set for 1 week, and then you'd have.
Well, you saved your clean set for pass out, didn't you?
Yeah,
and everything you just wore the same weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
As long as you didn't get a hole in your gloves, it was just
because we're enforcing clean PPE after an incident fire, so that's got to translate into a training fire.
Yeah.
So that's some of the initial inroads we're making. Obviously, we've got the frequency. If you wear your fire kit, it's got to go back in. And then looking ahead, as part of the innovation team, we look at sort of virtual reality to supplement and replace certain elements of hot fire training, exploring robotics and where that can take crews off the front line and replace it with a remotely operated resource. It's because being innovation, we want to sort of stop people getting contaminated in the first place. Everything's about what do we do once people are contaminated. Let's take a step ahead and not getting contaminated in the first place.
What about some of the decon stuff on scene? When you're going out and you're seeing people deploy, is it the wipes are showering the hour? There's some of the FBU stuff's been great. Some places it's been adopted. Some places logistically it's harder. We're hearing today there's 7 stations in Scotland haven't even got running water.
Yeah, I find that really shocking.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So I think we're good at getting that information out there.
Okay.
Maybe not so good at following it through.
Okay.
And making sure it's happening. And I can give one of my stations when I was district manager, prime example, their shower went off the run because of Legionella.
Okay.
So they put the sign on it, can't use it, blah, blah, blah. We had processes in place for them to go elsewhere straight away if they needed to. It was then sorted within the month. I returned 3 months later and the sign was still on the shower. So that's on call. I think there's sometimes a bit of a struggle there because they're not exposed to it, and they've got left, right, and centre, and they've got to return to their day job. So they are do that, return to where they need to be. So there's a bit of mentality to change there.
I mean, we spoke about on call and there around obviously the uniform, quote unquote uniform that they're wearing underneath the fire kit and blah blah. But it also made me think, because we were focusing around how everyone runs in, and I was on call for 10 years. But the whole time, like, how many people bring spare uniform? I always used to bring a spare T-shirt, because sometimes I wear the T-shirt in the gym and I need to wear the T-shirt. But we focus so much on I need to change my PPE. But we have spare sets of uniform, underwear, socks, the whole thing I've worn when I have been there.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself and say that was in my locker, and I was told that from a very early time to do that. But we didn't
lockers because they said you couldn't keep clothing with your PPE.
Yeah, and we've had separate lockers for that kind of stuff for a long time. So for us, I suppose, or from my experience, that was a relatively straightforward and easy win. But
is that mandated though? Is it
no?
And
did we change gear when we should have? No, definitely not. You'd come back from a job in your under stuff and get straight back into bed or whatever it was, or you'd go home and you wouldn't shower, you wouldn't do that kind of stuff. So I think that's changing, and it is. For whatever reason, and I can't put my finger on it, a slow wheel to turn. Yeah. Maybe it is that longevity thing where looking 10, 15, 20 years down the road, but more and more people are seeing that impact. More and more people know a firefighter, have lost a firefighter, be that short after retirement. And that you definitely notice the change now where people, when they get the opportunity to retire, are actually taking it because they've witnessed too many people now who thought, no, I'll work for a few more years and then not get to enjoy it because they've been hit by cancer or related illnesses that they could be related to the fire service.
How much of this, Chris, do you think we need to be, what's the stick, what's the carrot? We need to motivate people, we need to encourage people. I mean, I was hearing a great thing from Robbie, we had him on the podcast recently, saying that their hot fire training days, so their CFBT days, fire behaviour days, if you do not shower, you do not pass the day. That is one of those non-negotiables, and I thought, that's great. Like we say to people, bring a towel, make sure you shower, but when they've left the fire ground, we're like, quick debrief, sign the fitness decks, off you crack, have your lunch on the way home. I mean, we finally got to the don't eat on the incident ground thing, don't eat on the benches near the freaking firebox. Yeah. But like, what do you think about that, forcing people to shower? Should we be forced? I'm not going to watch you in the shower. Obviously, we're probably overstepping the line there, but where do we go with this?
Absolutely. So in the West Midlands, we have an assessment called tactical ventilation. That's where we go into a hot fire, perform a rescue,
done the tac vent.
Yeah, control the fire, make a ventilation, get out the flow path, fans on, vent the room, put it out. Happy days. Its consideration is being looked at now. So once that's done, the assessment doesn't finish until you've correctly demonstrated post-fire hygiene, stripping of the kit, bagging it up, and then you're done. So if that's what we expect, that's what we need to test, and that way the organisation gets the assurance it needs. Its staff not only know how to put a fire out and use a fan, but then can correctly mitigate the risks of contamination. So it's like a have to do, not a would like to do.
What did you guys think about the sticking the PPV on when you're doffing? I thought, genuinely never thought about that. Yes, we're continually off gas. Do you do it already, or is it?
No, I mean for hazmat and CPS, part of that decontam was like to turn around pirouette, expose creases to the air, so gases that were stuck, vapours could escape. I think that's like an obvious, again, easy win. We've all got fans on the trucks. Yeah, and the same for car fires. Why, if you've got your attack direction, just have it with the fan, use positive pressure just to knock the smoke back. It's those marginal gains. You'll have some exposure. You won't have the exposure you did have, and it's those marginal gains that add up to a big difference at the end of your career.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, no, I agree. It didn't even cross my mind for some reason. We are currently in the procurement phase of battery PPV, and that will make a big difference.
Significantly lighter.
It's lighter. It's not as noisy.
Because the big heavy ones,
quick, easy get to work.
Supposed to be a 2-person getting them off.
Yeah,
they're clunky. They're noisy.
And emit gases themselves.
That's why you can't take them up a high rise and blah blah blah.
Yeah, so we're still at a position in our service where not all of our stations are PPV.
Okay.
So bringing in these battery fans will then push the petrol ones to those stations. So in 18 months, I hope we all will be. And I'll take it back to our training team to maybe emphasise the fact that it isn't just building fires that they've got a benefit for. And when I roll out these new battery ones, that will definitely be on the agenda to make sure we kind of switch on to
remembering that it's a tool that does a function rather than a tool that we attach to an incident type, if you know what I mean.
That's right, yeah.
It's just a thing that does a thing. You could use the thing for lots of stuff.
Yeah, it's
really.
perfect innovation, being open-minded, thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, the number of firefighters and fire staff, and then there's just one or two people that have thought it's of that innovative procedure, just try and mitigate that risk. That's what it's all about. And then sharing it.
Yeah.
Not gatekeeping it and trying to profit from it. It's the sharing for the
That's why I think
fire
events
sector.
like this are so great, because we have our regional NOG groups and everything, and we're just talking about BA here, but there's many other factors where I personally feel like we are getting better at sharing that. We probably need a bit more formal streams. Sometimes it tends to go up to NFCC, and then if it filters back down, great. But more things like this, I think, are a real benefit. Where are your different services at with the particulate conversation around flash hoods and things? I know we gave an example in there. Hampshire have gone for it.
We're in a fully managed contract for a few more years yet. So for us, I think that won't change anytime soon with that. But it also gives us a couple of years to watch other services, which can be beneficial. I know the problem is here and now, but it gives us a little opportunity to watch what comes out of that, and then hopefully that big group that we are part of will follow that route with particulates and maybe LCO2. I don't know, but that group obviously has a big buying power and a big force. So I think we can kind of hopefully get the market to do what we want, as opposed to be led by the market.
That's the difficult bit isn't it? Sometimes it'd be easier if someone just legislated it so that it doesn't become an elitist thing where your bigger services, bigger brigades, it's like the old analogy, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. It's like, well, the big services will get the good stuff and their staff will be healthier. Smaller services won't. It sucks to be you. And that's like, well, if you just legislate, everyone has to, it would become more affordable in itself anyway, because the scaling of it and the sort of market price, the unit price would come down, I suppose. Where are West Mids at with it?
I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe we're in the process of renewing our PPE, part of a regional framework.
Okay.
Within that, I think we're also looking at wildfire kit.
Yeah.
Even though we're a mostly urban environment, times of in the summer with the wildfires, we get called onto our more rural neighbours, and then we're doing open wildfire fighting in structural PPE, which is not a good thing, and then crews are stripping down, and obviously exposure to contaminants.
Well, I also look at that. We look at it as wildfire kit, but looking at many of the models that are out there, it's multifaceted in its application. Sometimes, and I've heard people speak about this, like your firefighting PPE should solely be for firefighting. It's the most expensive piece of apparel that you're buying. Yeah. Only we wouldn't get the hazmat suits out just to do something whatever with, because we're like, oh no, they're special. Leave them in the box till we need them. Well, why don't we have a lower level thing for the vast majority of incidents? Because less than 10% of our jobs are actually,
And I think that the majority of wildfire PPE is suitable for almost everything else that the fire service do.
For all your RTC, for everything else, most everything else you could use it for, unless you've got a confirmed structural fire, then maybe you need to be switching out.
Yeah. And certainly we've been offered, several companies have offered to trial base layers.
Yes.
That's probably better suited towards our sort of breathing apparatus and structures, to have that base layer on all the time. I don't think that would translate well into everyday firefighters to wear a uniform and then a base layer, or having to strip off your uniform to put a base layer on.
That work either.
But ideally, if you made a uniform out of base layer material, that might be a win-win.
Yeah, but I agree with you, and I know it's not what you were saying there, but I hate it when people do use the excuse that, well, it wouldn't be fair for everybody. Yeah, but your fire behaviour instructors is one example, or your district training department, they're higher exposure. I'm not saying do it for everybody, and I'm not saying they're special. I'm saying they are at higher exposure.
Yeah. So at our training department, it started with instructors having Braga underneath. Initially, people thought that was a thermal thing, but it wasn't. It was, particulate, as we call it now. We didn't really call it that then. And that kind of got challenged, and rightfully so, by the crews and everything that are coming in, like why are they better protected than us? And obviously at that point we did put back instructors have more exposure, but we now supply braga and undergarments to every single person for when they do hot fire. So they have undergarments, we provide towels for the shower facility. So there is no excuse. And then they say, well, but then what about when we're on the fire ground? We don't have this. And the kind of argument at the moment is that at the moment we have control of that. We can control what you do at our training centre. We can protect you. We can do everything there we can. We can't protect you about everything that's out on the fire ground, not yet. Like we alluded to there, if we can get our blacks that we're wearing now, if we can get that into a suitable undergarment material, fantastic. 2 birds, 1 stone.
There's uncontrollables like you see on the incident ground. There's the great quote from one of the Australian guests we had on. He was like, warm to inform, don't burn to learn. And I thought, that's great, because it's a training environment. No one should be getting burnt, no one should be getting heat exhaustion. I am in control of this environment. So I am going to put levels of protection in there. I am going to put additional things in there so you can learn. So you're not just, we've all been in those training environments where you go in, you go, oh, how did you find it? I don't know, it was just so goddamn hard. I didn't learn anything at all. We just went in, I hit the thing really hard, and then got pushed back by the heat, and I don't think I learned anything.
Well, that's where we see a sort of a role that virtuality can play. So one of the first ways our recruits have will be just to sit in a room. The instructors will set fire to a load of pallets, and they'll watch the fire develop, the overpressure come down, the neutral plane, air tracks, all that sort of thing. But it's all been given while they're experiencing heat and smoke, and then someone's trying to talk through a BA mask, someone's trying to listen through a BA mask and the flash hood. It's not the best learning environment. So we can film that in virtual reality, and that'll become a classroom session. It can be paused, it can be rewound. What's that? And then questions can be posed. It's much more of a learning experience. And then when they've got that technical knowledge, they'll understand what they're seeing when they do go in. So perhaps virtuality replace that one instance of a hot wear, but for the rest of it, it will be to supplement subsequent hot wares, hopefully reduce contamination, less carbon going to the atmosphere. You're not spending as much money on wood being burnt for retakes. Everyone's getting assurance that they're upskilled, ready to go back in.
I love it. Well, look, fellas, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. It's great to see your services here, leaning in, learning this stuff, and then sharing it back in service.
No problem. Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
So wrapping up the end of today, Emily, I wanted to ask you a few bits, because some of the stuff you shared on behavioural change, having a few chats with people today, the hard skills versus the soft skills, the structural, the technical, the logistical stuff, a large chunk of this can be fixed with some behavioural stuff. Services need to take some accountability, organisations, producers of the PP need to take accountability, but there's some behavioural stuff. And you mentioned some really, really, really strong stuff in there that I wanted to circle back to. That sort of COM-B analogy. Just take us through that. I know it's a whistle-stop tour, but I just found it really powerful. I didn't want to not share it with people.
So the COM-B model of behaviour change works on the basis that once you have an identified behaviour, there are 3 components you need to think of. One of those is capability, the other one is opportunity, and then the third one is motivation. Now, on the surface, they sound quite obvious, but obviously there's a bit more detail underneath that. So when we talk about capability, what we're talking about is, do people know what they want to do? But also, in addition to that, it's whether or not the organisation is built in a way that encourages that to happen. So, for example, if everything is pointing left when you're asking people to go right, the chances of them going right are almost negligible. Opportunity is also about kind of social movements and whether you've got the cost. So it's what you can do to create pressure. And then motivation is quite self-explanatory. But it's really important with that to consider how people tick and why they tick. So beyond...
I feel like, a lot of those motivation stuff, that's what a lot of this is about for me. When we've been hearing today, we've been hearing the stories. It is a very emotive subject. But like you said, those mental pathways, all them grooves have been cut for us to go left for the last 20 years. So that is a real... You ever heard of the stuff about the elephant and the rider? That analogy of it. So it's in a great book. It's going to escape me for a minute, but the listeners will remember it. So the elephant and the rider is your logical brain. You've convinced me, I get it, I want to go left. But the elephant's the motivation. The elephant is your emotions. You're on along like you've heard it before.
Jim paradox.
Yes.
So they use it in the Jim paradox as well. Yeah, you've got to have... I have to want to do it. You can't just convince me logically. That's your analytical brain, your prefrontal cortex, the problem solving, all that sort of stuff. I have to have the motion as well. So the motivation feels like it's there. It's just a case for a lot of us and organisations to put in place those pathways procedurally to make it easier, like reducing habitual friction. Do you know what I mean? You've got to make it easy for me to do the thing I want to do. And I just think that aspect of behavioural change was
absolutely. And I think what you've got to remember as well is that the way firefighters are trained is they're trained to the point where it becomes instinctual behaviour. So it becomes almost, I just do it without even thinking. Yeah. And there are years and years of training that get people to be competent and maintain competency. Yeah. So to then have to undo that, it is going to take time and people are going to get it wrong. Yeah. But it becomes even more important to almost force people's hand down a certain way.
Yeah. But brush your teeth before you go to bed.
It's encouraging.
Things like that. We get it eventually.
It's just encouraging, though, the wish, want and the desire for people to do it, isn't it? That's what it is. And as you say, give them the pathway.
Do you think it's something to do with, like, firefighting is such a romanticised profession? It's very closely associated with people's, I'm the hero analogy, that being exposed to risk regularly, it's kind of like, we feel like we're used to it and we should be doing it. Is there a bravado to it that we have to try and get over as well, though?
That's still there.
Yeah.
That's definitely still there, Pete, isn't there? There is.
How do we get over that? Do we want to get over that?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's society in general. I think there is an element of that in firefighting.
It's a risk appetite as well, as
so there is they've got a greater risk appetite as a firefighter. But I mean, I did some stuff around road safety messaging around youngsters who are just getting their licence, and actually a lot of the productions we put on in the theatre were all designed to scare the kids and be really impactful. And when we had a behavioural scientist look at it, he said, well, your messaging is really powerful, but how do you evaluate that they're lasting messages? Because these kids will change their behaviour for a week or two and then it will start to fade.
Do you ever hear the study of Scared Straight in America?
Yes. I have.
Scared Straight, they took kids into prisons and assuming that would make a massive... It didn't. Yes. It often just created heroes for some of them.
It did.
And they just accelerated down the path. But it was like, we'll scare them and they'll never do it.
They never want to end up in a place like this.
It works sometimes, doesn't in others.
But they've been there, seen it and done it, and we'll have some more of that.
Yeah, and the people in there are going, you get every meal for free.
Yeah.
Get an education and it's great.
But these kids on the road safety sort of journey, they actually, if you try and scare them, they think, well, I'm bomb-proof. That won't happen to me. So that's why I say I think it's wider than just firefighters. I think youngsters don't feel that they're going to be caught in a car accident. They think, well, that happens to other people. It won't happen to me. But if you actually show them that their behaviour is going to impact them in other ways, i.e. it's going to make them not look quite as good on social media, and that actually it's not cool to do that. And that might have a better resonance with them not to do that behaviour.
It's that shift of, like you say, you were saying there, like how you look. I think it used to look good for dirty fire kit and looking like you're being the job. Now, when we're hearing these stories and we're self-reflecting on the things that we've done, it's one of those uncomfortable, damn, I've been doing that as well. There's nothing glorified about hearing Robbie's story and John's story and other people like that. It doesn't make you go, like I've got a bullet wound from war. You see this scar? It's not that. It's I'm impotent and my wife's got cancer and no one cares, but I'm all alone now and I'm going to die at 45.
Yeah.
Where's the glory?
There's no glory.
There's no big brave.
It's lose. Congratulations.
But the sad thing is, I think as hard hitting as their message and brave their messages were, fabulous. You can't help but be impacted by their stories. I worry is, no matter how many times you do that, human behaviour is very much caught up in my own world. That was in a week's time it'll be, do you remember hearing about Robbie? Yeah. That was awful. But in 2 weeks' time, it will be out of your psyche a little bit more. I don't think that is enough to change behaviour. No. And I know that sounds...
No, you're right. It's got to be a million fingerprints. It's got to be regular, weekly touch points. It can't just be one pivotal thing that you hit someone with. And we did that once a few years ago.
We spoke about it earlier on, didn't we? We needed to get to the stage where we talked about things being socially unacceptable.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And it was like the
someone drinking analogy while they're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone smoking in a restaurant. Excuse me. What do you think you're doing?
It's almost like you've got dirty kit, whatever. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. You're not a professional firefighter.
Exactly.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You stink. Get off the truck. I'm not riding with that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's the point we need to get to.
The thing that's worth considering as well is where you mentioned almost it's not potentially resonating straight away, is that sometimes people take time to connect to things. So it's almost like if you're in a situation and you've found out something horrific was going on and you didn't know, you've almost got to find your way through that and all the kind of guilt and the like negative stuff that goes with it. So it's almost like giving people space to have that journey as well, maybe something that's worth considering.
You're almost tiptoeing for me around there, and I wrote it down when you said it earlier, Chris, willful blindness. Talk to us about that for people that, again, didn't have the benefit of being in the room.
Well, I reflected on that in terms of, in the presentation I gave, I talked very much about priding myself on what I did in an operational context. I took into a managerial context and vice versa. There's a lot of crossovers where you can learn how to deal with problems. They're just different problems. And so in that, I talked very much on the operational field about, I always said, I just think we bring order to chaos. That's our job. And the simplest way to do that is segment your problems. And then in doing that, you're focusing on the here and now, the crisis management, but you've then got to, in a strategic context, look at the consequence of that. So it's very much crisis versus consequence. And what I was talking about earlier was, when I had time to think about this, when I reflected when I retired, it dawned on me, it was horrible, sort of started to feel this dread come over me. I thought, do you know what? I prided myself on taking my operational learning into my managerial learning. And yet here we are, hearing about all these horrible godforsaken stats about firefighters being 4 times more likely to die from cancer. And I'm thinking I was responsible for, national leave for PPE. I did know there was a problem. I remember talking to people about the problem. But running a very busy job as it was, with loads of other conflicting priorities, I didn't have the time and the space to do what I did on an operational setting, which was find space, think about the incident, get situational awareness, segment your problems, blah, blah, blah. Do all of those things. Oh, and now think about the consequence. I knew that there was an issue there. I didn't think about the consequences of it, and that does not haunt me, but that is one thing I look back and think I should have been better at that because I thought I was good at that.
But I hate listening to things like this and no one in the room pushing back, because I am going to push back there and say, you mean you didn't make time? Because you did have time.
Yes.
We spoke last night at dinner about the whole Eisenhower's matrix and stuff like this. It was urgent, it was important, but it wasn't urgent. Because it was down the road.
Yes.
It was, at some point, we need to do something about this at some point.
But
it's the old analogy, you don't need to fix the roof because it's not raining, but when it's raining, it's not right time to fix the roof.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? You're like, I'll deal with it when. Because it wasn't urgent. But you knew it was a problem.
I knew
and
it was
I'm
a
not
problem,
pointing the
but
finger
it
at you
wasn't-
here. There's many examples of
That's
all of
right.
us
And
who have
that's-
willfully gone, oh, God,
Yeah.
that rash doesn't look very good, does it? Better go to the doctors in 4 years.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, and it was when we were looking at the behavioural change, and we were saying that all of what we're talking about here is about reducing cancer in firefighters. But that very topic is very abstract. As we were talking about earlier, people don't really believe that that's an immediate problem for them. And so they focus on the problems that are here and now. And that's what I did. You're right, in hindsight, that should have been at the top of my list. But as per the analogy I gave around NASA, where they were accused of willful blindness because of their willingness or persistence to launch the Challenger, knowing that there was a dodgy O-ring involved, and it blew up on them. And then the judge said, if you should have, or you did know something that you strove not to see, you are guilty of willful blindness.
I think when we've done work with Gore-Tex, they have this principle of the waterline. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. They're like, is it a waterline decision? And what I mean by that is, if a bullet hits the boat, if it's above the waterline, it's okay, it won't sink us. Do you know what I mean? So maybe they were looking at that nut bolt and going, well, it's not a waterline. But now this thing has worked its way to the end of the urgency conveyor belt and is dropped upon the floor in front of all the chief fire officers and all the people in these organisations. How close are we now with the World Health Organization admits? We've got subject matter experts, toxicologists in the room today. We've got data from so many avenues hitting us. Are we approaching negligence? Are we approaching the point where someone goes, look at the Grenfell inquiries and someone goes, so wait, you knew, and then someone else told you, then a subject matter expert told you, then the World Health Organization. which bit are you claiming you didn't know about again? Sorry, because I'm not even in your sector, and I saw this. How can we continue? How is this not at the top of everybody's list?
And that's an interesting point, and it's how you get it on their list and how do you work with them, because the last thing you want to do is create adversarial roles.
Yes,
here.
you don't want
And
that.
You need to work with the sector to do that, and it's how you tiptoe your way through to say, look, and be persistent, that you really need to know about this, and then you don't get replies, and then you go, no, you really do need to know about this. But there does come that critical point where you have to say, enough is enough. And I think, Emily talked about getting a movement, and we talk about stakeholder analysis. Who's the most important people? Well, actually, firefighters might not have a lot of sway in terms of decision making, but if you get enough of them, then you do get to create that movement. So, but it's how you then articulate their concerns without it becoming adversarial, because that doesn't do the topic any justice at all when people go, because it comes about personalities then, I'm not hearing that because of who's delivering that message, rather than going, do you know what, that's a very important message. I don't like the fact that you've had to tell me it.
That's with the greatest respect, and again, we're not anyone specific, but sometimes with the unions, it's like, if you take a knife to the conversation all the time, it's always going to be a knife fight. We don't stop bringing a knife to this conversation.
Exactly.
Let's have a conversation. We're all in this together. Let's try and work for a solution. But when I see the attendance of today versus last year versus other events, I feel like we're shifting past that motivation. People are convinced, people are on board, and they're coming back now with, help me find solution. Help me find one of many solutions. Not convince me of your theory. It's help me find solution, was what I felt a lot of in the room today.
They're convinced now. People are convinced and need to be convinced, don't they? Well and truly. But it's exactly that now. Come on, we just need to really push this one on and push this one on over the next hurdle, over the next jump, really. But we're getting there. The traction is there now, isn't it?
And you said it yourself, Emily, like resistance or confusion or anger or frustration or enthusiasm are all forms of engagement.
Absolutely.
So we're in it.
Absolutely. They're forms of engagement, but they're also a massive form of information. And it's really worth listening to that and unpicking what that resistance is and why it's happening, because it gives you the key to how to move forward.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I think we're there, Pete. To be fair, I think obviously now the ear of NFCC, they're getting it. It's there now, isn't it? It needs to be there. Albeit there are still, sadly, back to the conversation that you've just had. There are other pressing priorities, aren't there?
Everything's a priority, therefore nothing is. That's the thing.
And sadly,
social needs, pay,
it just goes
mental
on,
health.
doesn't it?
It's everything has £1 million budget to it. But a lot of this, as we were alluding to, and I don't want to go back over old ground, but it's like a big chunk of this is behavioural. I'm not asking you for £1 million in every conversation. Chunks of this will cost money. But as I've said with a number of people today, someone is already paying the cost. We look at the cost and we think pennies or pounds. The cost is not just that. The cost is the families that we've heard about today. You're actually just passing the bill onto someone else, and they'll pay it a long time away from now. So I always say there's no solutions, only trade-offs. Do you know what I mean? Someone's paying the bill. It's just how you think they're paying
I think the problem that's out there is, how do we coordinate our activity? How do we get strategic about this? Because this has a lot of the hallmarks of when we introduced community fire safety. I remember used to turn out to incidents. The more incidents, actually, the pay formula in those days was adversely. It actually rewarded fire services. The more jobs they went to, the more they got in their budget. It was perverse. And then we introduced community safety, saying that actually we've had the thought we should try and stop fires happening before they happen. That did not go down well with a lot of rank and file firefighters who saw that as actually almost spoiling the job that they had joined, because it was, hold on, I've joined for the thrill, the excitement of going to fires, and you're actively trying to prevent that. And you had to remind them in those days, saying, but you are here to prevent harm and suffering, and this is a better way of doing it. But what happened is you saw fire services all coming on board with that, but then just going off in their own little worlds, trying to implement new systems, and there was no coordination to it. And it took probably 10 years before you got that coordinated approach where you got best practice and how to deal with it. And we haven't got that time. We need to have a strategic, it's like I said in there, tactics without a strategy is the noise before failure.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to start thinking about. Who needs to be in the room? How do we coordinate this? How do we push this agenda forward? Because you've got Simon, you've got Andy, who are doing this through no commercial gain. They're doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. How do we get everybody else? And people
Feels like
John,
we're getting the right people on the bus slowly, though. I say the NFCC, the procurement specialists and individuals such as that, the firefighters, the boots on the ground, the charities. We're getting the right people on the bus. But one pushback against that, because when people felt like the community safety thing was spoiling the job, and one pushback against some of the speakers today, the knee-jerk solution is never send anybody into any of the fires. But that negates the socio-economic value that, my hotel's on fire. I employ 600 people. That has a lot of value to my community. And when I speak to some of the, I had Lars Axelson on the podcast, and they go, and we're saying, there's a lot of people saying, don't put anybody in fires. And he's like, no, just do it properly. Just do decon properly. Just have better PPE. Don't have to not go in the thing. We don't not go into water jobs. Why not? A lot of people drown. Yeah, but we still go in. It's just the risk analogy and go, well, can we just increase the safe system of work to the point where this is an acceptable risk? And that is achievable. It will take a long time. It will take behaviour, it will take money, it will take change. But it's not unachievable. So the knee-jerk solution of let's just hit it hard from the yard, let's just stand outside, I don't think that's the answer. And actually, you increase the risk of firefighters then, because one day when they do have to go in, because they will, because there will be persons reported, they will be at a higher risk because they can no longer do the thing.
Because they're not experienced enough to do it. They won't have experienced what they should be doing.
But they need to go and do it.
You think, 30 years and firefighting tactics haven't really changed in that 30 years I was in it. And I look back at that, and that's one of my other regrets. I think, do you know what? We started introducing new concepts to firefighting, and we backed it up with technology, which enabled you to do a lot more. But holistically, across the country, our firefighting tactics are the same as when I joined. And there's this preoccupation with 2BA and hose reel, 2BA and hose reel. And we've got to move past that. It's going to take a while, but there should be an investment in R&D, because actually, in 10 years in the future, you look at car accidents. So now we gear up, we say, well, look, they're making cars stronger to protect the occupants. They've got boron steel in it. Okay, we need to enhance our cutters so they can cut the boron steel. So this kit's getting heavier and heavier, more heavy duty. And then what's going to happen, if we don't look ahead, what's happening in the car industry is cars they won't be able to collide at one point, because that's their focus. It's about driverless cars, which are in the future, they're going to happen, and there'll be these collision restraints that won't allow a car to actually collide. So it will be engineered out. And yet we've just been following that curve, and that cutting gear, the need for that could potentially drop off a cliff face because of the technology.
Well, it's already falling down now, and we won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but things like the Exit Project, IRRTC, UCRO, all those things. We do a lot less cutting than we ever did. We don't need to our full roof removal. Why? Let's just make a little bit of space creation, get the person out of the thing. Do you know what I mean? So that is an example where we have advanced in our tactics. But you're right, in firefighting, we've rested on our laurels. We're still doing the same stuff we were 30 years ago.
And that is impacting on the contaminant issue. The way we fight fires now is not the best for the contaminant. So I think there's a way forward where you get improvements in both.
It's there's training, there's a behavioural, there's a procedural,
there's technology,
there's equipment,
there's technology, how we fight fires. And we're a long way off before having not having to send people inside a compartment fire, but we should be getting, those opportunities should be getting less and less and less as we move forward. And that will solve a lot of the contaminants issue overnight.
I want to be respectful of people's time because we're getting late in the day. We want to get ourselves off. Simon, we've had a lot of speakers today. You've obviously been present for a few of the sort of iterations and evolutions of these sorts of things. What did the mood in the room feel like? It was great to have the toxicology and the academics here today. Was anybody you were particularly impressed by?
I think my overall feeling is it just feels like there's a movement now. It feels like a tribe of people who are committed to something important. I mean, the last session we had with PGI at Biggin Hill was a really good event of itself, but it definitely felt like momentum was building today, and I'm looking forward to the John Lord event in Manchester. There's momentum and there's commitment. Yeah, I think it's very tangible.
How about from yourself, Andy?
Yeah, I kind of mirror Simon's comments really. Yeah, the one we had in September was fantastic, way better than we thought it was going to be. But and I think we have created a movement really, because that's when we decided, look, we're going to need to do a second one. And I think the calibre of people here, and like you say, the fact that Hertfordshire University wants to be part of this as well, I think we've actually gained some credibility in what we're doing.
The willingness to invite academics in here with no... Yeah. That's the beauty of science. It's not, I don't care if it's right or wrong, it's just that is what it is, my impartial professional view.
Yeah. And I meant what I said at the beginning. We were very humbled when you get the... Because people have travelled from far and wide, from the States, Australia, top of Scotland and things. Yeah. So it obviously means something to them. And I thought the feedback's been fantastic. The look on people's faces, like, this is a priority now. This has been brilliant. And I hope that does continue, because unfortunately, as you said before, it's when they get back to base, they get back into their day jobs, and then everything, it starts to get lost. And so it's almost like we do need to keep this going. Yeah. But how? Because I don't want to do the same old. We want to have another, Yeah. So it's
that's
keeping
that continuous networking.
That's my
people will go back as champions, lonely champions. Sometimes it's like the warm bath analogy. You come to something like this, you really, really warm. You jump out, you go back into, and then people discourage their drains versus radiators, and they can pull a lot of that energy, enthusiasm out of somebody. So it's important to have that network.
Or they change jobs, or they move on, and you've completely lost that. So that's why I think it was a great idea to get it filmed today as well, and doing what we're doing with yourself, Pete, because then we can keep going, referring back to it. So we got some legacy there, So.
Well, look, I really enjoyed it.
Continue.
It's been great to see everyone in the room. It's been great to see the energy. It's been great to see so many services represented and actually putting themselves forward. But thanks so much for your time, ladies and gents.
Likewise.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The Firefighters podcast was created to recognise, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means that we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, tallies, and also access to all of the incredible documents that get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, then please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month, you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you're in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.